I'm back in LA. It's Market Monday Madness. I can't believe it. I'm streaming every fucking day. And y'all act as though I haven't streamed yesterday and you're desperate for my attention. Is it because I did IRL and I couldn't respond to chat as much? Is that what it is? If I end this broadcast, the Great Depression will start. You understand? Crazy things happen when I'm not live, and crazy things are happening even when I am live. So calm down, okay? Constitutional crisis over. Constitutional crisis over. Legally deported and demands return to the U.S. Court order to return to the U.S. Measles is back. Get in now. Dude, isn't that sick? We have historic diseases that we had damn near eradicated due to vaccines. They're making a comeback. Complete financial collapse of the global system. And also the American administration is actively running in the direction of becoming is already doing like fascism. Welcome back 1920s and 1930s at the same time. It's sick. It's fantastic. It's very cool. I love living through history. I love living through historic periods. It's fantastic. Get some banger off, blast off memes. Dude, you just sent me an Instagram link. Does anyone have a freaking blast off meme? Does anyone have a blast off meme explaining the Trump tariff equation? I have explained it so many times. Well, not the mathematical side of it, but I've explained to you how stupid the tariff structure is and how silly it is, why it's dumb to do it. I feel like I'm gonna keep having to explain it over and over again because like there's just new people, I guess, you know what I mean? People that are just tuning in maybe. But I do feel like I'm gonna be repeating myself quite a bit as I usually do. Why is the expectation any different today as opposed to any other day? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, like I said, it is Market Madness Monday. Instability galore. Trump is winning, so much winning. They're going to say, Mr. President, we've won too much. Please, no more winning. But I'm going to make you win again. I'm going to say, you're going to beg me, Mr. President, no more winning, please. But I'm going to keep saying, we're going to win more. We're going to win more and more. So much more winning than you've ever encountered, ever assumed, ever wanted. This is exactly the kind of winning that you are going to get. So there's a lot happening here. Hassan was right. Misgift says, I hate Trump. That's so funny.
Chap, I fucking hate Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump so much. Hassan was right the whole time. Asmongold was wrong. I fucking hate Donald Trump. I hate him so much.
Yo. I mean, yeah, I don't know what anybody was thinking. Yeah. Isn't it crazy that not only is Donald Trump bad on this side, like bad for the economy in the short term, especially for those with like wealth in the stock market, which is the biggest no-no you can ever engage in. Like the entire point of the American presidency is that stocks always go up under your watch. Stocks never go down. Stocks always go up. And then everybody shuts the fuck up about it, right? They're like, well, we're making money, right? What I find really strange about this is that these guys are not even aware of how bad Donald Trump truly is. Like they're not even aware of all of the other stuff that Donald Trump is doing, like the mass deportations, the erosion of the First Amendment, the erosion of due process. It is kind of funny to see like all these dudes coming out and being like, yeah, I think we might have fucked up a little bit. Like Misgift didn't endorse Donald Trump, you know, but Aiden Ross certainly did. Look at Aiden Ross and DJ Academics having a conversation now that his stock portfolio is taking a major hit.
People are getting killed. Me too.
Yeah, we all are.
You look at your shit?
Bro, holy fuck, it's so bad.
Nah. How much you lost? Be honest.
8 figures. It's almost
damn.
Yeah.
Yo, you over here like, fuck it, Kamala, come back to me. You over here singing the song like the Kanye Bianca song.
It's bad, I'm not gonna lie to you, bro.
It'll get better, bro.
I know.
It'll get better.
It's bad, though. It will get better.
Yeah, look. I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm not. Tide is turning. XQC is now saying he never endorsed Trump. Him being there with Eldon and shaking hands with Trump was not an implied endorsement, he said. What happened, dude? What happened? Maybe this shit was not a meme. What's going on, dude? This is the beginning. Okay, hold on. We got to play the, who has the meme? Who has the so much winning meme? We got to play it again. 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 He had a fucking Trump shirt on. I know. Where's the so much winning meme that I keep playing? We have to play it again. Who has it? Someone has it.
You're gonna win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
Not this one. I want the other one. The one that organizer memes made. I love that one. That one's my favorite.
The president, it's too much, and I'll say,
yeah, this is the one. This is the one. So
much, you may even get tired of winning. And it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much, and I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. Please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
Funniest parts about all of this shit is that like the Tim Pools of the world and the Trump dick riders of the world are like, Donald Trump is eradicating billionaires and their wealth right now. $7 trillion pee-pee poofed overnight. $7 trillion in market value gone. Okay. Couple things that I must maintain here. One, money is the most fake it's ever been. It will never be more fake than it is at this very moment. That's number one. The entire global financial structure is just, it's all maintained through confidence. Okay. It is so crazy. That's number one. Number two, money is the fakest it's ever been. That's number one. Number two, the idea for leftist values and socialists is not just to like fuck everyone's 401ks or their nest eggs or whatever. The entire point is uplifting the working class. It's not about, like, leftists do not want to nuke the entire planet. Okay? That's not the point. And a lot of these fucking dumbasses on the right don't comprehend that. They're like, oh, I thought this is what you wanted. It's like, no, dude, no. We want everyone to have basic amenities, to have their basic needs met, because we have the power and we have the abundance to be able to do this. We have the surplus to be able to do this. Okay? It's not about just like fucking over rich people a little bit for the first time ever, while simultaneously, for no discernible reason, doing that and fucking over the working poor spectacularly more. You know what I mean? That's not the point. The point is to actually build a manufacturing hub with good paying jobs where you know people can buy a house, okay? Fix the housing market. Those are the things that we're supposed to be doing. This is not like the point isn't just to be like, haha, $6 trillion of fake value eroded overnight. Lol. It's like, okay, so did people's like retirement funds. You know what I mean? It's such a funny attitude that like some of these Republicans have, which is like, they're just, that's what they think. That's what they think is going on. What they think is going on is like, oh, well, you know, rich people are upset. So this is good. To be fair, it is kind of funny. It is. Especially if you like, you're looking at your 401k, it's not so funny. But then you're looking and you're thinking about like how much more value has wiped out from infinitely wealthier people. And that resentment obviously exists within you. And you look at that and you're like, okay, not the worst thing. Obviously, they will recover from this in ways that you will not be able to. So, you know, I am cautious in the way that I cover this, because on the one hand, it's like, haha, it's funny. But also on the other hand, it's not so funny because what is yet to come is going to fuck every normal person a lot worse than it screws over the super wealthy. Because they'll always be like, wealth is a relative concept. You're only as wealthy as your wealth is still at the end of the day determined by how others who don't have that kind of wealth. Like it's a proximity thing, right? So they will, under this new structure, still maintain their position, still maintain their status, still be wealthy, just not as wealthy, I guess, right? Yeah, exactly. You're only as wealthy as others are poor. That's just how it kind of works. So that's why I'm like, you know, on the one hand, I think it's very funny because it's like another moment of vindication. Something that I said was incredibly stupid that people seemingly did not listen to. I kept saying like universal tariffs. As a tariff liker, as a tariff enjoyer, as a trade protectionist appreciator, I think what Donald Trump is doing is very stupid. And lo and behold, it was, right? Yeah. Not just rich people, not rich, but I do have money in stock and bonds. I'm losing the very little wealth security I have. Sucks. No, I know. I'm that's why I'm saying on the one hand, there's a little bit of catharsis in seeing like a guy like Aiden Ross be like, oh my God, I lost like $10 million overnight, right? But also on the other hand, you look at your own fucking situation, you look at your portfolio and you're like, well, he can lose 10 million. I can't. So it's a weird circumstance knowing full well that like they can rebound from that, right? They can recover from that. Whereas you are not going to be able to recover from that. So on the one hand, like I see the catharsis, I see the resentment that a lot of people hold and why it's like kind of funny. But also on the other hand, I recognize how damaging this is. Yeah. See what I'm saying? Law, only 62% of Americans have stock. That's an insane number of people. And also, it doesn't even matter because here's the reality. And this is something that I've talked about quite a bit. The way that it works is the gains in the stock market are privatized. They are up there at the tippy top, okay? It's consolidated. Wealth is consolidated at the top. The top 10% of the stock market owns 90% of all of the stocks, okay? In the United States of America. The bottom 90% is the 62% you're talking about. The bottom 90% is literally they only own 10% of the stocks. The way this works is when the stock market's doing well, they're doing really good. You're doing all right in comparison. But when it's doing poorly, those losses are socialized. So when the stock market does poorly, you're fucked because companies start engaging in layoffs. You might get a recession. You might get a depression, right? So it's really fucking, it's awful. It's an awful situation overall. And it's not like this government or any government, as a matter of fact, in the United States of America has ever historically looked at economic downturn periods and said, we got to save the working poor. Fuck the wealthy. We got to save the working poor instead. That has never happened. So that's also another scary circumstance. It's another scary thing to look at. So it's not about the actual losses, but the effects of those losses of the stock market downturn. Yes. For the average American, you would not care about your 401k if you had a reliable pension program and also Social Security that could keep you afloat. You'd be like, okay, this is extra money on the side. Great. Okay. The only reason why you feel like you have a vested interest in the stock market doing well is because you don't have those things. And we have basically financialized that aspect of people's retirement already. Something I talk about quite a bit. This is the reason why, and it's a very clever, very insidious method of making you feel like you have a vested interest in the stock market doing well. It is crazy to me that most people don't recognize this. That is precisely the reason why the dude working at the fucking kitchen, like a chef, under normal circumstances, who's not like super caked up, is still going, I'm checking the stocks. It's doing well. So I guess my president is doing right by me. It's like, bro, that's not for you. That's only there to make you feel like it is for you, right? And the unfortunate reality is, of course, you can't do anything about it because in the absence, this is why I say, like, while I personally am, of course, very much against capital accumulation, I understand that even as a leftist, like, you have to have a retirement fund, right? Like, being a socialist, being a moral socialist doesn't mean that you work till you die. Being a moral socialist doesn't mean you can't have some kind of security, some kind of protection for your future. This is something that I've talked about quite a bit. I would never urge you not to have a 401k, for example. But for many people, I think, especially people that are just entering the market or have entered it and have been working for like a decade or whatever and have been trying to cultivate a retirement fund for themselves, those people know they're never retiring at this point unless something changes dramatically. And things are changing dramatically, except in the direction that hurts them, in the direction that hurts the average American, and not in a direction that helps the average American. You know, lol, look at Richie Rich over here. I only have a 01k. Yeah, no more 401ks, only 205, 201ks. Maybe a 101k after this week. Who knows? So let's get into it. Donald Trump created a process in which the Bloody Market Monday has taken place. I truly thought about staying behind in New York just to get a better read on Wall Street, but I wanted to be back here with my family, so I had to run back. And a lot of weird shit happened apparently because I was half asleep on the plane, but like checking the reports, and it seems like there was also an error in the reporting that caused the markets to bounce back up because people were so desperate. Okay. In the midst of this chaos, there was a brief moment where someone misunderstood what Trump was saying or what Trump's team was saying, and they literally reported it incorrectly, and it caused the markets to rebound because people were like, oh my God, thank God. Okay, the tariffs are a lie. Haha, it's fine. Yeah, here it is. This absolute comedy. The market was blood red today. Then an unattributed rumor was started on X and there was a consideration of a 90-day tariff pause. The market turned green. Then 5 minutes later, the White House denied the rumor. The market became red again. What are we doing? It is a fucking clown show that one guy, and it's not even fake news, by the way. It wasn't even a fake news situation. It was that Bloomberg account, and it's not even a real Bloomberg account. It's just like Walter Bloomberg or something. And he just like makes it seem as though he's directly reporting from the Bloomberg terminal. Like he just tweets like he is a Bloomberg terminal. And ironically enough, he misunderstood what the fucking dude was saying. He just simply, it wasn't even like, I don't think Walter Bloomberg, this guy, I don't think that he was reporting this because he wanted to misinform the public. I think he was reporting this because he's a fucking blue checkmark account that wants to be first to market and misunderstood what Hassett was saying. Because Hassett basically said something along the lines of like, you know, when I'm asked a question and I say, yeah, no, that's kind of how he replied to a question as far as I understand. And he misinterpreted it. And because it's a fucking Twitter blue checkmark account, he went first to market with it. And when that happened, it fucking blew up. It blew up. It's so crazy. This is everything that I talk about. This is precisely what I talk about in terms of like misinformation and how stupid it is. Remember who posted fake Hassett headlines in Bloomberg style? Reuters reported on it, chat. Reuters, as in fake news from a fucking unverified, silly ass Twitter account caused actual financial newsrooms to literally go to market with the fucking bullshit. It is crazy. This is the world we live in today. Do you understand how psychotic that is? CNBC reported on it. Instantly, the markets flipped and everyone was like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. The tariff surge is fake. Haha, he was just joking. 90-day pause. We have confidence in the market again. Buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. Donald Trump's White House comes back and says, ha ha, fuck you. That's not what we meant, bitch. It's fake news. We're going to make the markets scream. Here it is.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, you know, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide.
Yeah, he said, yep, I think the president's going to, that's it. That's the reason. This is a misinterpretation of this from a blue checkmark Twitter account that wanted to be first to market and fucking pump the goddamn tweet and get clout and maybe like $35 in Twitter revenue. That is the reason why almost $1 billion of value came back to the market over this one key piece of misinformation.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, you know, I think that the president is going to.
Oh my God. 3.5 trillion. 3.5 trillion over. Oh my God. Oh my God. I thought it was billions. I didn't realize it was fucking. Oh my God. I apologize, chatters. I was on the plane while this was happening. And I was like in and out of sleeping. So I didn't even realize. And then it fucking dipped again when the White House said this is not correct. Insane market action right now. Market exploded on a headline attributed to Kevin Hassett. And now nobody can figure out whether where it came from, and the markets are diving again. An 8% surge and a 3.5% plunge in a matter of seconds. One, money is so fake. I'm telling you right now, I'm begging you to understand, this is the most fake money has ever been. This is, ironically enough, the contradictions of capitalism in full display. Okay? This right here is the problem with the financialized capitalist global economy. This is it. This is it. A little bit of misinformation in times of instability can cause market movements like this. I never want to hear any fucking economist or any expert tell me that this is a rational process ever again. Oh, supply demand. Look at the supply demand. All of this shit is fake. It's all about confidence. Nobody fucking fully understands the fundamentals, and the fundamentals don't even matter. It just doesn't matter. You cannot have a situation where a madman can single-handedly wipe out $7 trillion of fucking value over the course of a couple days, only to have it bounce back for 3.5 trillion because the people are so desperate for a return to normalcy that they fucking cope and believe a random Twitter blue checkmark account who did not understand the point that this dude was making and heard his transition word where he used yep for a brief moment, for literally half of a second, and that brought back $3.5 trillion in value. Money is fake. It's the most fake it's ever been, and it will only get more fake. This is why I always used to fucking tell you that the only difference between cryptocurrencies and the fucking stock market is at least that there is like some assets that you can associate within the stock market. And at least historically, the stock market was based on fundamentals. It was always unstable. It was always gambling, but at least there was like a little bit less gambling. Okay. Cryptocurrency is like playing roulette with a blindfold on, whereas the stock market is like playing blackjack. Okay. The odds are more in your favor in that process. And there's a method. There's a rule book to it, but it's still fucking gambling. It's very cool that everything in our economy, every single company in our economy works in the casino. How amazing. How amazing. And all of this stuff would not happen if this wasn't the perfect storm of, one, automation, because there are so many trades that are happening in an automated process. And because so many people were incredibly fucking desperate to hear a sense of normalcy. Now, the last part that I want to maintain, the last part that I want to mention here about this entire process being a fucking casino is that Donald Trump bankrupted his casino. He literally bankrupted his casino. He's bankrupting the casino again. What is happening? But this time it's the global casino. Oh my God. This is literally the same shit. The guy who fucking had 6 bankruptcies, 6 fucking bankruptcies, including bankrupting a fucking casino, is bankrupting the global casino.
Thank you very much.
And now he's over here sucking the cock of Benjamin Netanyahu, a war criminal. Holy fuck.
Mr. President, I want to first thank you for inviting me again to the White House. You've been a remarkable friend of the State of Israel. You stand by us. You're standing.
I don't know if you guys saw the tweets of people on the timeline being like, please, I hope Jews do control this entire system. Please fix it. I saw people posting being like, oh my God, I've never wished for the Jews to be in control of the global financial marketplace until this very moment. Please, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, sir, please control it. Please fix it.
I just want you to know from the heart, it's deeply, deeply appreciated. As you said, we had the opportunity to talk today about many subjects. First, if I can mention tariffs.
Yeah, this fucking piece of shit came here to do his laundry. Okay, that's why he's here.
I said to the president a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. I recognize the position of the United States. It says, you know, we're allowing other countries to put tariffs on us, but we don't put tariffs on them. And, you know, I'm a free trade champion, and free trade has to be fair trade. And I think that's basically the position that you have put forward, Mr. President. We are going to eliminate the tariffs, and rapidly. I had the opportunity to speak.
What is this? No matter what happens,
Secretary
just remember
Lutnick,
it's the
yesterday.
Jews.
We talked about how we could affect this quickly, and I hope to bring a solution very quickly. We're not talking about intentions.
Dude,
we're not talking about
that's just
words.
cope,
We're talking
okay?
about
You can't say Nazis are coping today, okay? They simultaneously are like, oh yeah, Jews are these all-powerful magic money people that are controlling the global financial market. Look at the Rothschild family or whatever. And then simultaneously, this fucking Christian guy is just dunking on the global financial market. And it's like, well, it's the Jews again. It's the Jews again. They did this somehow. It's like, come on, man. You think they would let this happen? Are you crazy? if they had motion like that?
Steve Witkoff, who was President Trump's very able representative, helped us get a deal that got 25 out. We're working now on another deal that we hope will succeed. And we're committed to getting all the hostages out, but also eliminating.
God, I hate this piece of shit so much. I hate him so much. He's such a fucking monster. God damn it. Also, Donald Trump put his chair in again, by the way. Look at fucking Russia Today, loving it. Netanyahu inside the White House. Trump's helps with the chair again. He's got to be doing it on purpose, right? Like, there's no shot.
Countries that might be amenable and are amenable to accepting Palestinians of their free choice if they choose to go there. And I think that's the second thing. But the hostages came right on top. We also discussed the situation in Syria. We've had neighborly relations with Turkey that have deteriorated, and we don't want to see Syria being used by anyone, including Turkey, as a base for attack in Israel. Turkey is a country that has a great relationship with the United States. The president has a relationship with the leader of Turkey. We discussed how we can avoid this conflict in a variety of ways, and I think we can't have a better interlocutor than the President of the United States for this purpose. And of course, we also discussed Iran. Look, we're both united in the goal that Iran does not ever get nuclear weapons. If it can be done diplomatically in a full way, the way it was done in Libya, I think that would be a good thing. But whatever happens, we have to make sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. That's the end of my speech.
I can't stand how fucking arrogant Israel is overall, and especially Benjamin Netanyahu is. There's no way people look at this and think like, no, this is valid actually. Like if I'm a fucking random dude in Arkansas and already have like anti-Semitism in my mind, and I see shit like this, I see Donald Trump putting the fucking chair up for Benjamin Netanyahu. I see Donald Trump fucking making my 401k scream, and then turn around and glad handle fucking Benjamin Netanyahu as he just sits there in the most entitled, arrogant fashion and be like, yes, we are going to do a very important deals, like we can bomb whoever we want, all this shit. I'm telling you, there's no way, there's no return from that.
Many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. We can't be the stupid people anymore. And it's all because of the people that sat in the seat right here. Not your seat, but this seat. They allowed things to happen to our country that they shouldn't have allowed to happen on trade and other things, many other things. I mean, look at what's happened with our last president, where he allowed millions of people to come into our country with an open border. Who would want an open border? How stupid is that? But he allowed millions and millions of people. And of the millions, and I think it was 21 million people, but let's say 3 of them were serious criminals, serious murderers and drug dealers and gang members and people from jails. All the jails emptied out right into our country, right along the open border on Mexico, generally the Mexico open. They came in from Canada too, by the way, a lot. But generally speaking, on the southern border. And what a shame it is that we are now working very hard to get them out, get the criminals out, get the murderers out, the drug dealers, the mentally insane, get them out. They dropped the mentally insane in our country too. And this was all done by the Biden administration. It's a disgrace that we have to work so hard. And then we have judges that try and protect these people. But they didn't protect us when the people were being let in. But to get them out is never easy with these people. So I think we're doing a great job. The border is the best it's ever been. It's even as strong as it was. I had a great, solid border. I think it might even be tougher right now and stronger. So people are coming into our country, but they're coming in legally. We have a legal process, and we have that moving along properly because we need people to come into our country. But we want people that can love our country and cherish our country. So that's where we are. And with that, any questions? Well, we're not looking at that. We have many, many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals. And in certain cases, they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. There'll be fair deals. As you know, I spoke this morning with the Prime Minister of Japan, and we had a very good conversation. They're coming. And I said, one thing, you're going to have to open up your country because we sold no cars, like 0 cars in Japan, and they sold millions of cars into our country. They don't really take our agriculture, a little bit of it just to keep us slightly happy, but they don't take what they're supposed to be taking. So we have a great relationship with Japan. We're going to keep it that way, but they're coming in to meet, and other countries are coming in. With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way. And I have a great relationship with President Xi. I hope it's going to stay that way. I have great respect for China, but they can't do this with just, we're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it because we have been just destroyed, what they've done to our system. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. And the reason is that people allowed it to get that way. So we'll be talking to China. We'll be talking to a lot of different countries. And I think, you know, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last. The people that were in the Oval Office put America last, and we're not going to stand for it.
He's actively destroying the country. He's actively destroying the global economy. He's destroying everything. He is literally, dude, look, I am not a spiritual person at all, okay? But you got the fucking 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You have pestilence, RFK Jr., bringing back measles like it was, like it fell out of fashion, and the trend has created it once again. It's fashionable again, okay? You got fucking Donald Trump, a false presenter of Christendom, destroying the global economy for no discernible reason, for no real reason. I'm fucking the economy because I'm bored, okay? That's what he's doing. And also simultaneously undermining the remaining protections that average citizens have against government overreach, destroying it. It is crazy. It's end time shit. What are we doing?
Very end.
How do all these evangelicals not recognize that this is like real end time shit?
And, so there are a lot of things outside of tariffs, but tariffs are very important. But there are a lot of things like opening up countries that were totally closed. China's essentially a closed country. In fact, it is a closed country. And what they do is they charge tariffs so that if you sell cars,
every day I think to myself that this is going to recover because there's too much vested interest, that like the Fed is going to bail them out. But like even if they lowered interest rates, I don't even know if you could bail them out in this process. Like he is accelerating a recession in an effort. Let's say he's trying to trigger a recession with the hopes that the Fed will bail him out. Okay, let's say that that's the goal here. Because that I feel like that's like the only one of the things that that he could be trying to do. But even then, Like, how, what do you do? What do you do in that process? Like, that's not gonna work. It doesn't make sense. Wait, what the hell? The video broke. Now the video broke. Oh my God, the video broke. Are you kidding me? Oh my God, nothing works, dude. Nothing works. My microphone didn't work when I first started. Nothing is working. Oh my God. Oh my God. The Chinese beam hit it.
Because a lot of people are asking the Houthis. We've been very tough and very successful militarily. We've really damaged them badly. These were people shooting down ships and other things, by the way, flying objects like airplanes.
I gotta pee.
We've put a major hurt on the Houthis, which nobody's been able to do. We've really hit them hard, and it's every night, night after night, and we've gotten many of their leaders and their experts. They're experts on missiles. I mean, they actually make missiles. Nobody thought that, but they make missiles. They're highly sophisticated, and they're very tough, but they've been very badly damaged. Nobody else was able to do that but us. Pete, you want to discuss that, please?
Yes, sir. It's been a bad 3 weeks for the Houthis, and it's about to get worse. It's been a devastating campaign, whether it's underground facilities, weapons manufacturing, bunkers, troops in the open, air defense assets. We are not going to relent, and it's only to get more unrelenting until the Houthis declare they will stop shooting at our ships. And we've been very clear with the Iranians as well. They should not continue to provide support to the Houthis, and that message has been made very clear. So we have a lot more options and a lot more pressure to apply, and we know, because we see the reports, how devastating this campaign has been in them, and we will not relent.
We have a great military. There's no military like our military, and despite Biden having given a lot, but nevertheless a pretty small piece, but it was a lot of our military away in Afghanistan, and one of the dumbest situations, I think, and maybe the most embarrassing situation.
It was Biden that was dumb. You, sir, are brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for the $1 billion in defense of Israel's genocide by bombing the poorest nation on the planet. You are so sick. Is this recent? It's live.
Where they're parading trucks that are armor plated.
Yeah, the Houthis are hurting, dude. Far from being cowed by U.S. airstrikes, Yemen's Houthis may be relishing them.
We have a tremendous
it's so good, Mr. President. Please keep bombing Yemen, and also please keep bombing the financial markets. You're doing so well, Mr. President. You're a special boy.
Essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility.
It would be so funny if after all of this, he removed only Israel's tariffs. That would be fucking amazing. Donald Trump literally is just like, Donald Trump does not care. He is actively trying to make everyone go, oh, okay, I guess Israel, the Jewish state, is in control of America. Never mind. The relationship is not the other way around. He's just like, yeah, that's right. I'm doing this. They're powerful money people. That's why I'm doing it. I'm revoking the tariffs only on Israel.
And they had $100 in the bank, and they give her $2 billion. Many of those cases, all that stuff is going to be cut out. But we are getting a very had before. We've never had the kind of, because hopefully we're not going to have to use it. But the military is very powerful, and it's going to remain that way. Yes, Queen.
I think I'm gonna. By the way, I've never read this. I've never read this book. But I've seen it be recommended quite a bit. I've never read this book personally, but I've seen it be recommended quite a bit. And obviously, like, I've read pieces from this book, but it's beginning to feel a lot like this in the United States of America. And I might have to go back on my old ways and maybe read a goddamn book for once, because a lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing, because like the USSR was obviously forced to be dissolved, right? But there was a lot of spectacular failures along the way that led to the collapse. This book goes into that directly. On the one hand, you get Pizza Hut and Pepsi. On the other hand, you have to liberalize your markets. And you do that by collaborating with Western Western analysts, and as the regime is falling apart, all of the people with power that collaborate with Western authorities on the matter make out like fucking bandits. A shock doctrine, if you will. One of the guys that is responsible for this, for the record, is, ironically, a dude who's very woke now, but played a formative role in all of this happening to the USSR. His name is Jeffrey Sachs, friend of the show. Wait, Trump responds to the EU offers as not enough?
Over the years, I always say it was formed to really do damage to the United States in trade. That's the reason it was formed. It was formed with all of the countries from Europe, I guess most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And they formed together to create a little bit of a monopoly situation, to create a unified force.
It's beginning to feel a lot like the collapse, the internal collapse of the USSR.
The same countries.
But this time it's not being accelerated by outside forces, like Western capitalist forces that wanted this to happen. And instead, it's just happening because we're bored.
Where they paid NATO because most of these nations weren't even paying. We were paying for NATO. So we're paying them to guard them militarily, and they're screwing us on trade. So that's not a good combination. So now...
What is this?
It's really turned around. It's the
Trump may
opposite.
escalate the Libya-style
The
regime
European
change
Union's
war.
been
Regional
very
diplomatic
bad-
sources say
very bad
preparations
to
are
us.
underway for a ground
They
operation.
don't take
Oh
our
my God.
cars, like Japan in that sense. They don't take our agricultural product. They don't take anything practically. And yet millions of cars in a year, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, BMWs. They're sending millions and millions of cars into the U.S., but we don't have a car that's been sold to the European Union or other places, but let's go for the European Union. And it's not going to be that way. It's got to be fair, reciprocal. It's got to be fair. It's not fair. We have a deficit with the European Union of $350 billion, and it's going to disappear fast. And one of the reasons and one of the ways that that can disappear easily and quickly is they're going to have to buy our energy from us because they need it. They're going to have to buy it from us. They can buy it. We can knock off $350 billion in 1 week. They have to buy and commit to buy a like amount of energy. And we have that. You know, we have more energy than any country in the world. I don't know if you know.
Dude.
Everything, but
He was asked if the EU zero tariffs enough. His answer, not enough. He also waved away suggestions that U.S. trading partners would go to China. They want to be in the arms of the U.S. Yeah, because the tariffs are not about tariffs. They're not real tariffs. Well, Trump is instituting real tariffs, and the counter tariffs, the retaliatory tariffs, are real. But the reason why he instituted tariffs to begin with were not because those countries had tariffs. It's because of a trade deficit that we have. And Donald Trump doesn't understand why America has a trade deficit. It is a trade-off so that the United States of America gets to maintain the global currency in which global trade happens with the dollar. This is the responsibility. This is what happens. America is the largest consumption engine on the planet, and also simultaneously, all of the fucking trade is done on the US dollar. This is how we dominate the fucking planet. He's like, oh, this trade deficit is fucked up. It's fucked up. We got to fix the trade deficit. Who's going to buy American-made products in much poorer nations, you fucking idiot? You have the SWIFT system. 80% of all trade happening is literally controlled by America, okay? And that is partially as a consequence of the way that we have designed the global market. It's partially a consequence of our trade deficits with these countries. It is fucking crazy. It's crazy. He doesn't understand it. How does he not understand this? You're the president.
Crazy.
Twice now.
Week. They said eggs have quadrupled in price. I said, I just got here. Tell me about it. And Brooke Rollins and our team did a great job. And eggs are down now 79%, and they're all over the place. And this was a problem that somebody else would have taken a long time to cure. We have energy is down. We have interest rates are down. We have groceries, meaning food is down. We have everything is down at levels that nobody ever thought possible. Energy looks like it's going to be in the $2.50 a gallon range, and maybe below that for a car. So for gasoline. So we're really doing amazing. I mean, we're cutting prices because prices got so high people couldn't live. I mean, the prices for groceries, the prices for standard groceries, standard things were going through the roof. They couldn't live. And now those prices are coming down. So call them groceries, but that's down, energy's down, and interest rates are down.
The only reason why I don't think Giannis Varoufakis' analysis is correct is because I think he's falling into the trap of thinking that Donald Trump and his administration are actually moving in this direction deliberately and with a clear goal in mind. Okay? Yanis Varoufakis believes that Donald Trump is trying to devalue the dollar, okay, and create some semblance of trade parity that will boost manufacturing in the long term in the United States of America. The issue, on the other hand, is that there is none of the underlying reasons, the skeletons are not there for there to be any sort of parity whatsoever, because there's no manufacturing here. Not only is there no manufacturing in the United States of America, there's no way to boost manufacturing. Without centrally planned economies, you will never be able to quickly develop the infrastructure necessary to become a competitor to China. And even if you had the ideological backing and the money, which America does certainly have the money to do this, okay?
It's a tough place in the world, isn't it?
Even if you had the ideological backing and the money, which you don't have the actual interest in doing this, you don't have the time, like physically. You don't have it. This would take at least a fucking decade.
Well, I can't really say that, but I think it'll be.
So on the one hand, while I understand Yanis Varoufakis is trying to make sense of it all and trying to read the tea leaves and say that like Donald Trump wants to, you know, create a more even process on the global stage so that there's like at least more American manufacturing. There's no fucking American manufacturing. And there's no appetite from the labor aristocracy to go and work at these jobs anyway. And also, Donald Trump would not make it so that these jobs are actually well-paying, high-benefit jobs regardless. And he has no interest in fixing some of the other affordability crisis points that pressure Americans every single day. Most importantly, the housing market. So he is the worst guy to do this. He's the worst guy to do this.
Unbelievable distress. They said no. I said all of them. I said, did they ever wink at you like you'll be okay? You're going to be okay? No, they didn't do that. They'd slap us. The hatred is unbelievable.
I think you're both wrong. I think he's just justifying his tax rate increases revenues without calling it tax hike, which is what tariffs are. No, I've said that. I think there are a couple top-line agenda points here that Donald Trump has openly mentioned.
Tunnels bad, but pipes are worse. And the stories I heard were incredible. But I just said, was there any sign of potential love or affection? And there were none whatsoever. It was amazing to me. There was nothing like, here, take this. It's a little extra meal or something. They lived like hell. I don't know. They seemed to be amazing to me because they seemed to be pretty normal. They weren't scarred. But I guarantee underneath they have to be scarred. And one was there for 356 days. Another was there for about 180 days. You know, a long time. These are people that have been.
Did Giannis really say Trump is doing this for good? No, Giannis thinks it's going to fail, but I think he thinks that the Trump administration has like some intelligence behind these decisions. I don't think so.
I think there are many that want to get rid of tariffs right now. European Union, I mean, as badly as they've treated us, they've brought their car tariffs essentially off. I guess they brought it down to 2.5, and I hear maybe to nothing. But it's not only tariffs, it's non-monetary tariffs. It's tariffs where they put things on that make it impossible for you to sell a car. It's not a money thing. They make it so difficult. The standards,
he wants to dominate. He wants to basically do something that like technically an international trade is illegal, but there is no way to escalate these disputes to an international body like the World Trade Organization. So he basically wants to dominate whatever decisions governments are making that maintain their sovereignty. Like, for example, you don't want hormone-infused American meats? Well, fuck you. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have your own personal regulatory body that has decided that, like, American meat is substandard quality and cannot be sold in your markets? Well, guess what? It's going to be sold in your markets. You're going to take our bleached chicken, as a matter of fact, by force. That's what is going on here. That's what the point is. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to, 1, decouple America and the rest of the world from China. 2, he's trying to forcibly fix trade deficits by forcing these countries to violate their own sovereignty and purchase American products without even actually without even actually beefing up the manufacturing side in the United States of America. So I don't even think that there is a capability to fucking send all of this shit to the rest of the world. He wants to undermine the World Trade Organization and rebuild it in his own vision, even though ironically that is the point. That is what happened initially. But then China took advantage of that situation by, developing quite rapidly. And here we are. None of it has anything to do with like real tariffs. It's not. It's if you are stuck on the word tariff, you'd be lost in the sauce. I think those are the top line goals of this administration. The only way this would work is if like the dangerous instability that Donald Trump presents from his position of authority is met with the resentment that like European powers have towards Chinese administration, the Chinese administration, and therefore they go, okay, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Those guys are literally Chinese. At least these dudes are white and dangerous. It's the evil that I know versus the scary Chinese. So I'm going to go with the evil that I know. And they just capitulate to Donald Trump's insanity somehow, which still fucks them over, which still completely fucks them over in the process. No, it quite literally, like the European trade policy right now is a Nick Mullen bit. You're literally Chinese is what they're saying to the other side of the trade equation. They're just going, you're Chinese.
Our country will have to reset the table because no other president would be willing to do what I'm doing or to even go through it. Now, I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end, but we are making tremendous progress with a lot of countries, and the countries that really took advantage of us are now saying, please negotiate. You know why? Because they're getting beaten badly because of what's happening. They're getting beaten badly. They're being devalued as countries. But it's the only chance we're going to have to reset the table on trade. And when we do, we're going to come out unbelievably well. We're going to have a strong country economically again. And we're going to have those factories that are empty all over the United States. We've lost 90,000 plants and factories. Think of this, 90,000, you wouldn't think it's possible. 90,000 plants and factories since NAFTA, which was, by the way, the worst trade deal ever developed, ever had by any country anywhere, NAFTA. And I terminated NAFTA. Everybody said it would be impossible. And I terminated it through Congress. We terminated it. You had to get it through Congress. It was a trap. It was a horrible thing. And we got it done.
What is that? Bro, that's crazy. That's crazy that this keeps breaking.
They cheat like crazy.
Nothing
Canada
works anymore.
Cheats,
America no longer dominant. Nothing works.
We are resetting a table, and we're going to have great trade, and we're going to have a very strong country. Our country is going to be at a level that has maybe never been, or maybe, our country was the strongest, believe it or not, from 1870 to 1913. You know why? It was all tariff-based.
Oh my God! Oh my God! He's so
then in
stupid.
1913, some genius
He's so
came up
stupid.
with the idea,
1870 to 1913 is not comparable to
ripping off our
2025. You're so fucking stupid. Why are you like this? How can someone say such stupid things?
We had meetings. We had committees.
It's so dumb. Okay, Donald Trump knows this is a dumb comparison. You know why? Because just a couple weeks ago, he went, everything's computer. What do you think that is? Everything's computer. You said it yourself. Everything's computer. You think it's the same? You think, was everything computer in 1879? No, nothing was computer. Everything's computer now.
Help Israel a lot. We give Israel $4 billion a year. That's a lot. Congratulations, by the way. But we give Israel billions of dollars a year. Billions. It's one of the highest of, and we give a lot of countries money. You wouldn't believe if I said we give Afghanistan a lot of money. Do you? Because that was a Biden deal, another Biden deal. Not only did he embarrass us with that, but they give them billions of dollars, Afghanistan, right? So, but no, we take good care of our friends, and we don't take care of our enemies. We're not taking care of our
lower
enemies
Israel
anymore,
tariffs. He said maybe not.
The IDF is fighting again in the Gaza Strip. I myself might be called up in a month. Do you think that's the way to pressure Hamas to get to a deal? And do you think blocking humanitarian aid is also an effective pressure?
Well, you know how I feel about the Gaza Strip. I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, and I think it's something that we would be involved in, but, having a peace force like the United States there, controlling and owning the Gaza Strip would be a good thing. Because right now, all it is for years and years, all I hear about is killing and Hamas and problems. And if you take the people, the Palestinians, and move them around to different countries, and you have plenty of countries that will do that, and you really have a freedom zone. You call it the freedom zone, a free zone, a zone where people aren't going to be killed every day. That's a hell of a place. It's you know what I call it, a great location that nobody wants to live in, because they really don't. And when they have good living, real living, where Hamas and all of the problems they have, the level of death on the Gaza Strip is just incredible. And I've said it. I don't understand why Israel ever gave it up. Israel owned it. It wasn't this man, so I can say it. He wouldn't have given it up. I know him very well. There's no way. They took oceanfront property and they gave it to people for peace. How did that work out? Not good.
He loves it. He's such a vile dog, dude. They're both such evil fucks. He's talking about mass ethnic displacement, the Nakba, as oceanfront property, purging millions of people, 750,000 in 1948, to a tiny area known as the Gaza Strip, as giving them graciously oceanfront property.
And any other place, including in arenas of battle, I mean, whether it's Ukraine or Syria or any other place, people could leave. Gaza was the only place where they locked them in. We didn't lock them in. They're locked in. And what is wrong with giving people a choice? Now, we've been talking, including over lunch, about some countries, I won't go into them right now, that are saying, if Gazans want to leave, we want to take them in. And I think this is the right thing to do. If you give, it's going to take years to rebuild Gaza. In the meantime, people can have an option. The president has a vision. Countries are responding to that vision. We're working on it. I hope we'll have good news for you.
I will say, people really do love that vision. It's a long-term vision, but so importantly is to have that be a safe field, because you're right smack in the middle of the Middle East. You're right along Israel. It should have never, ever been given away. It shouldn't have been given away by Israel.
What do you mean? What are you talking about? They were there. Who's giving it away?
They promised peace, but that didn't work out too well, because it's one of the most dangerous.
They were there before Israel. Oh my God.
Gaza is one of the most dangerous.
Oh, he's talking about 2005.
So they gave it away for a good intention, and it didn't work out that way. And a lot of people like my concept, but there are other concepts that I like too, and there's some concepts I don't like. You know what I don't like? The way it is now, because right now it's a dangerous death trap. Gaza. Yeah.
The concept he's describing is final solution ethnic cleansing.
Do you still plan to meet with him? Could that happen in Saudi Arabia? And maybe you could elaborate as well a little bit on not providing tariffs on Russia, sir.
So
I want to see what Asmongold's chat is saying about this.
Tariffs with Russia.
By America being dominated by a foreign leader.
War, and I'm not happy about what's going on.
Let's see what the fuck they're up to.
With the bombing, because they're bombing
Let's
like
see how
crazy
base
right
they think.
now.
Two-faced
What's happening
Netanyahu.
there? That's not a good situation. So we're meeting with Russia, we're meeting with Ukraine, and we're getting sort of close. But I'm not happy with all the bombing that's going on in the last week or so.
Okay, they don't like it. They don't like it.
It's a horrible thing.
They don't like it either. Hassan literally checking your chat. What a bozo. I like to fucking see what the other side is saying. Maybe you guys can learn a lesson from that as well.
Advantage of for 40, 50, 60 years. And the reason we got ripped off and the way they did it was tariffs. They would charge tariffs, massive numbers of dollars. And when you look at China, when I took over, it was at $507 billion they were making. I call it.
People will be like, Hassan wants to be in an echo chamber. And then when I step outside of the echo chamber, they go, Hassan is stepping outside of the echo chamber. It's a crash out. No, dude, I want to know what you guys are thinking.
$507 billion that
we all live in this country together. I got to know what y'all are up to.
And we were very, very tough on them because
Asman fans hate you but got you on the other screen. I know, that's kind of funny.
Then Then when Biden came in, he let him get away with murder. He had no idea. I'll tell you what, that man had no idea what was happening, whether it was the border or China or anything else. He had no idea what was going on. And they went wild. China went wild. And the money they make is ridiculous, okay? It's just not going to happen. And hopefully we'll get along with China. If we do, that's great. And if we don't, that's okay too. But we can't let that continue because that's an abuse. They abused.
Why are you tapping the glass? I'm not. I'm trying to look from afar. But they recognize that I'm looking from afar, and they realize that they're being observed like zoo animals, and then they start acting out.
To happen. But we are going to bring great trade, and we're going to be fair to other countries. And I will say this, virtually every country wants to negotiate. If I didn't do what I did over the last couple of weeks, you wouldn't have anybody wants to negotiate. We would have gone to these countries, you want to talk? And they were, well, we don't want to talk. Now they're coming to us. They're offering things like even Bibi, and this is unrelated because it's a different kind of a relationship, but he started off our conversation today that he's cutting all of the tariffs, he's cutting everything, he's going to get down to a free base, he's going to do things that, in all fairness, other countries, if they said that, would have never even thought about doing it. Now they're offering things to us that we would have never even thought of asking them for because they're experiencing a lot of hurt. And the hurt is that they've taken advantage of us and we finally fought back. Tariffs will make this country very rich. We're rich anyway, but we're rich in a certain way. We have $36 trillion in debt. I want to get rid of it. And we can do it quickly with proper deals. So when countries don't allow us to sell our product, but we allow them to sell their product, when they charge us massive amounts of money for the privilege of going into their country, those days are over. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Sir?
Me?
Yeah. He sounds so
Thank
surprised.
you, Mr. President. On Iran, two questions, please. First, you can give us more details about where the meeting on Saturday is going to
I can't tell you that. I can just tell you there's a major meeting going on between us and Iran, and that'll take place on Saturday, and it's at top level.
And second question about this. A lot of people think that those talks are not going to lead anywhere because the Iranians will never give up their nuclear program.
I think that's a possibility, too.
Is the United States, under your leadership, ready to take military action to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and remove this threat?
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
So
Can't have it.
Ready?
Right now we have countries that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it, but I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that too as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks aren't successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case. Yeah.
Mr. President,
Yeah, please.
Mr. President, was October 7th the death blow of the two-state solution, and would you consider classifying the Palestinian Authority as a terrorist organization for its continued pay-for-slay terror financing payments?
So October 7th was a horrible day that some people, they deny it. Now, I can't believe they deny it from the standpoint of it. They do it because they think it's good politically. But I've seen the tapes. I've seen things that you don't want to see. October 7th was a horrible day, and it will go down as one of the really bad days in the history of the world. It was a horrible, horrible thing that happened. And they grabbed some of these people. I'll give you an example. When I was with the 10 hostages a few weeks ago, I said, so how many are there? 59.
I saw this. We'll get to that in a second.
So we can get 59. They sort of knew the territory pretty good. And I said, how are they doing? They said, well, only 24 are living, the rest are dead. And these are young people largely. Young people don't die. You know, young people have an amazing ability to live. They can live through horrible things. But these are young people. And when they said that 24 are living and the rest are dead. And, you know, I've had parents come up, Israeli parents largely. We have some Americans, and I guess we have one left. Alex. We have the one left. But I've had Israeli parents come up to me at events and say, my son is there. I said, well, how's he doing? Well, he's dead. But would you do the biggest
What?
favor
That is
ever? His
insane.
body back home.
How is he doing? Well, he's
It's
dead.
about a young dead boy.
He has such
and
a
young
fucking
dead
insane
girl.
way with words, man.
They were
This
living.
is like such an
that could have
insane
something
way to
to do
talk
with
about
religion,
such an
that could
insane
have
way to
something
talk
to do
about
with,
things.
I
Oh
guess
my
maybe
God,
any
no
would be,
tact.
But I was surprised. They said, sir, my son is dead. It is just as important to bring that body back home. I asked that question as if he were alive. So you have a lot of them dead, and we'll be able to bring them back. But it's a horrible thing that's happened. These are young, largely young people. Some old ones too, frankly. And those people have lived in hell. When they came off, the second group that came out, they looked like they just got out of a concentration camp. They looked exactly like the pictures that I'd see from the 1940s, the concentration camps. And then they got a little bit better, you know. But that second group, those people came out, and I said, this is unbelievable. We're going back into a chapter in history that is one of the worst ever. It's really very bad. Okay?
It took 2 years to get American manufacturing fully up to speed. What happens in the meantime?
Well,
Should Americans be prepared potentially for years of disruption?
We have now $7 trillion. Think of this, $7 trillion of commitments from companies wanting to go in, from Apple to many, many companies.
That takes time.
Many from Taiwan. What? Of course it takes time. Well, are you asking me a question, or are you telling me? Yeah, it takes time. You know, you got to build a thing called a factory. You have to build your energy. You have to do a lot of things. I'm giving them energy. You know, we're going to let
Why
them
are they
build their
jumping
own
topics and completely
power
ignoring the
plants. They'll be
genocide?
their
Why do
own-
you think?
essentially,
Because
they're
both
gonna
of
be in
them
charge
know
of
that
the
it's a
power
genocide
plant
and like
because
it.
Our power is not reliable enough. You have a grid that's old and susceptible to a lot of things, including bombing and weather and a lot of other things. And we're going to give them record timing in terms of approvals of electric plants. Most of them want to build electric plants. We need massive amounts of electricity if we're going to compete with China and others. And interestingly, we're way ahead right now in the AI race with China. But the way we lose that race is if we can't give them electric. But we have more plants being built. We have everything. We're doing so great, and we want to keep it that way. And tariffs will be an important part of it. But one of the other things, Lee Zeldin's doing a fantastic job, head of environmental protection. And he's doing very rapid approvals for people to get, for big companies that are going to build a plant that's going to cost billions of dollars, and we're going to get them their approvals. They have to be environmentally perfect, everything good, but they're going to be in record time, a matter of months versus a matter of many, many years. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, Lisa Rosowski from Haaretz. Turkey claims it will stabilize the situation in Syria.
Turkey?
Yeah. Israel
This is
doesn't want
huge.
Turkey to influence
Yeah.
Syria. What do you think? Do you think Turkey's influence in Syria can actually make it a better, more peaceful country, or vice versa?
Well, I have great relations with a man named Erdogan. Have you heard of him?
No.
And I happen to like him, and he likes me, and I know the press will get very angry. He likes Erdogan, but I do, and he likes me, and we've never had a problem, and we've gone through a lot, and we've never had a problem. We've always got, as you remember, we got our minister back from Turkey. You remember that? And this was a big deal at the time, and we got him back. And I told the prime minister, I said, just, Bibi, if you have a problem with Turkey, I really think I'm going to be able to work it out. You know, I have a very, very good relationship with Turkey and with their leader, and I think we'll be able to work it out. So I hope that's not going to be a problem. I don't think it will be a problem. Now, with that being said, I believe it was Turkey, and I said that to him. I said it. I said, congratulations. You've done what nobody's been able to do in 2,000 years. You've taken over Syria with different names, but same thing. I said, you've taken it over. He's taken it over through surrogates. He goes, no, it was not me. I said, it was you. But that's okay. You don't have to say, well, it sort of maybe was me. Okay. But what he did, look, he's a tough guy, and he's very smart. And he did something that nobody was able to do. You know, you got to hand it to him. Any problem that you have with Turkey, I think I can solved. I mean, as long as you're reasonable. You have to be reasonable. We have to be reasonable. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.
The Syrian case is a particularly interesting one because the Turkish government and its actions are advancing the interests of NATO and advancing the interests of the United States, as Donald Trump is pointing out here in Syria specifically. But Israel also is the American client state. So we are quite literally, once again, in Syria, funding both belligerents, okay? Funding both sides, and they're fighting one another. It makes no sense. For those of you who don't know what happened in Syria, Israel has obviously been relentlessly bombing Syria, and one of the last rounds of bombing was where Israel struck some Syrian facilities where Turkish engineers were, and apparently killed a bunch of Turkish engineers, Turkish nationals. The thing is, both of these regional powers have interest in dominating Syria, and they have also they're getting the go-ahead from the United States of America, which is a unique predicament because, like I said, that was fake news. Oh, come on, dude. Marwan, the Syrian goat, you're so fucking annoying every time I talk about Syria, dude. Every time, dude. Every time. Yeah, Israel's not bombing Syria. Is that a fake news? Or Turkey doesn't have coalition forces in Syria? You act like Turkey didn't play a formative role in taking out the Assad regime in Syria. Why do you always say this? Why do you always say this? If they're acting like no Turkish people actually got fucking killed in the process, it is probably to save face. Okay? That's it. Because once again, both sides are funded by the United States of America. Both sides are operating at the behest of the United States' grand vision, its grand plan, its grand design in the region. Okay? That's it. That's it. There's a reason why there are so many, there's so much social capital that Erdogan can expend in the process of dominating its political opposition in the country right now without the American government saying anything about it. And that is because he has played the role of a loyal servant and undermined a significant logistical hub for Iran because of a incredibly weak tyrant that allowed virtually every country that would let him keep power into Syria and operate through Syria to create a direct pathway from Iran to Lebanon. This was a major issue for Israel and therefore a major issue for the United States of America. It's not like Assad was personally invested in, I don't know, the liberation of Palestinians or whatever. That was not the case at all. But given his weaknesses, he gladly agreed to Russia using Syria as a warm water port in exchange for dominating all the opposition forces, and same with Iran. The whole Syrian, the last round of the Assad regime's collapse that happened seemingly overnight happened because Turkey's coalition forces alongside the HDS were able to very swiftly overtake the entire country, and in the process destroy one logistical hub that worked, that played a formative role in allowing Iranian weapons to expediently go to Lebanon into the hands of Hezbollah. The ISIS guy will agree to letting Russia in too if he ever wants his airspace. Would you say it's accurate that Turkey wants to turn Syria into client state and Israel wants to balkanize Syria into one or multiple client states? I think Israel wants more. I think Israel wants Syrian territory. That's what I think. And I think Turkey also wants to turn Syria into a client state, maybe like a Belarus style situation. And it's two of America's attack dogs in the region competing with one another for pieces of Syria, like larger control over Syria. The smart play would be to leave it in the hands of Erdogan. From a pure American standpoint, I'm not saying it's the appropriate thing to do, but the smart play for the United States of America would be to give it to Erdogan rather than Israel, because a lot of the Islamist forces, like the fundamentalist forces, a lot of the Sunni population also carry a shit ton of resentment towards Israel, but they actually fucking love Erdogan. Therefore, if your goal was to maintain stability in Syria and allow Syria to no longer be no longer be in the hands of Iran in any capacity whatsoever, without more destabilization, it would be to turn it into a Belarus for Turkey. But Israel doesn't want that, because Israel wants more land. Israel wants more territory. This is the reason why they're fighting against each other in Syria right now. Obviously, the moral thing to do would be to allow Syria to have a full democratic process, but that's never going to fucking happen. America does not care about the autonomy or the livelihoods of the Syrian population, let alone its own population. These guys don't even care about Americans. Why the fuck would they care about Syrians? You know what I mean? But yeah, Israel has been, for the last couple of days, been posting shit like this. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan tells Reuters Turkey wants no confrontation with Israel and Syria. Ultimately, actions mean more than words. We'll wait and see how things play out. Israel will prevent the establishment of Turkish air bases or naval bases in Syria, says senior official. If Turkey crosses red lines, Israel will take action, he says. It sounds like Israel is now threatening to start a new war with Turkey over Syria. Present Israeli leadership is committed to total war against all its neighbors in addition to a final solution to the Gaza problem. They are becoming something like Imperial Japan or Nazi Germany. Not becoming something like Imperial Japan or Nazi Germany. They are Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany. They literally are. I don't think that it'll get to this point, though, even though, as you guys know, I don't make predictions anymore. You know, I've learned my fucking lesson. But both of these sides are ultimately America's lapdogs, okay? Turkey is America's servant. It's a NATO nation. It's got American nukes inside of American military bases in Turkey. That's not going away anytime soon. That is precisely the reason why, no matter how much Erdogan plays both sides, turns out it turns around and, like, you know, collaborates with Russia, collaborates with China, it still doesn't fucking matter. Ultimately, Turkey is still an extension of American empire. Okay, Turkey as a state, Turkey as a state, serves the interests of America first and foremost. That much should be clear to every single person, especially after what took place in Syria. Middle East, oh, Israel and Turkey already agreed not to fight law. Yeah, Israel always and Turkey always. Two notorious regional actors that actually play ball with deconfliction. Notoriously. Turkey and Russia have violated their own deconfliction lines over and over again. And Israel is a notorious serial line avoider and line crosser. These are two of the most unstable nations in the region. What are you talking about? This means nothing until Donald Trump says it's done. We're partitioning the country to give you a piece here. Southern Syria is yours. Israel, Turkey, shut the fuck up. They get to have their operations there. The rest of Syria is yours. Until that is solidified by the United States of America, this means nothing, okay? Their own personal back and forth is inconsequential, is utterly inconsequential due to their track record in the region, due to their serial overstepping of these sorts of red lines and boundaries. Why do you think it's okay to split up people's land like pizza? You think I think it's okay? Are you stupid? Did you not hear what I said? No, I don't think it's okay to fucking partition Syria and balkanize it to give pieces of it to Israel and the rest to Turkish control. No, I think it's insane that we're doing it. Hello? There is so much. This is yet another instance where it's like, nope, doesn't matter what your worldview is. Are you offering analysis? Well, to me, it sounds a lot like justification. It's like, no, I'm telling you what is going on. I'm trying to explain to you what the plan is here and what the personal motivations or the personal ambitions of these two American client states are in terms of dominating Syria. I am in no way, shape, or form endorsing this, okay? Yeah, 69% literacy rate in the United States of America. Of course, this is a unfortunate byproduct of such realities where people just don't understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. Okay. Yes, the conversation ended with Prime Minister war criminal Satan Yahoo. We're going to get back to explaining the markets screaming red bloody murder and numerous other subjects that I have yet to discuss today. There's a lot going on, so we shall get right to it. Let's get back to the global markets getting absolutely cumstered and dumpstered.
Get to the news. The markets are reeling once again from worries that President Trump's tariffs could cause a global recession. Markets from Asia to Europe suffered steep losses overnight, including a 13% drop in Hong Kong's index. In the picture here, we're sorry to say at home, it's just as grim. Before trading even opened today, just think about this, the S&P, the Dow, and NASDAQ all suffered sharp losses in recent days, hitting many Americans' retirement accounts. Caitlin Huey-Burns is at the White House, where the president does insist the tariffs are a good thing. Caitlin, good morning. We heard the president say sometimes you got to take some medicine.
Good morning. Well, the president's message to Americans was essentially hang tough. But that may not be easy with even bigger tariffs coming down the pike and also could increase the price of everyday goods. But the president made clear just last night that he's not planning to change course.
President Trump is preparing Americans for potentially more market pain ahead, as even steeper tariffs are set to take effect later this week.
I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something.
Speaking on Air Force One Sunday, he defended his trade policy and downplayed last week's Wall Street drop, the worst in 5 years.
What's going to happen with the market, I can't tell you, but I can tell you our country has gotten a lot stronger.
The 10% baseline tariff on a majority of imports went into effect Saturday, and the larger reciprocal tariffs on dozens of countries kick in Wednesday.
There is no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks.
Administration officials said Sunday more than 50 countries have reached out to the White House to try to negotiate.
They're dying to make a deal, but I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country.
President Trump, who spent the weekend golfing at his club in Florida, says he spoke to a handful of world leaders from Europe and Asia this weekend, including Vietnam, which is facing one of the highest tariffs at 46% and provides the U.S. with things like computers, clothing, and shoes. Trump wrote on social media that Vietnam would cut their tariffs down to zero if they can come to an agreement with the U.S.
If you look at that.
But Democrats warn Trump's tariff policies will have consequences.
If we head into a recession, it will be the Trump recession. He will completely own it.
The president is scheduled to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later today here at the White House, where the 17% planned tariffs on Israel will surely come up, as well as the war in Gaza.
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much.
The warning signs are flashing red. Stocks are in freefall. Money is pouring into safe havens instead. Traders navigating markets thrown into turmoil by a volatile US president.
We have a predictably unpredictable leader of the free world who announced he was going to do something that everybody was expecting, but he did it in a way that upset the global world order. It was indiscriminate. It was wide-ranging. So what does that cause? Massive uncertainty. And when you get massive uncertainty, you get a markdown in prices. And you see this huge fall in indices.
And this is what massive uncertainty looks like. This is Wall Street's VIX index, also known as the fear gauge. It measures how much traders are willing to pay for insurance against price swings. It tells us how much volatility they're expecting in the US stock market over the next 30 days. And things, well, they haven't been this volatile since the pandemic back in 2020, and before that, the financial crisis of 2008. And both of them were followed by recessions. So more volatility to come, as if we haven't had enough of that already. Donald Trump announced his sweeping tariffs policy last Wednesday, and whatever cautious optimism traders may have had was...
From what I can tell is people are not even buying U.S. bonds, which normally people will get when selling stocks. The entire reason why the market's like closed even is because, from what I understand, the moment of misinformation that that people were incredibly desperate to hear, that they just like grabbed on to a moment of hope.
Swiftly shattered. Stock markets across the world plummeted. And after a brief respite over the weekend,
We got one guide.
well, they're still falling.
gotta
Here in
pee.
London, the FTSE 100 in the blue, that was down 4.38% today, while Germany's DAX in the yellow fell 4.26%. And Asian markets fared even worse. China's Shanghai Composite Index lost 7% on Monday, its worst day in 5 years. And this shows us how things have moved since Trump was elected. But let's set it all in a wider context. For the FTSE 100, we have seen bigger falls than this. Black Monday back in 1987 being the big one, but it does rank among them. And things haven't even bottomed out yet. In fact, they could still get worse.
The really, really bad scenarios of a full-blown global trade war with multiple retaliation is not priced by markets currently. The FTSE 100 is only 5% lower than it was on January the 1st. That's not the sort of stock market fall you would expect to see in a full-blown trade war.
Trump's first presidency gave us a president who cared about the success of stock markets. Well, those very markets have given his tariff policy a clear vote of no confidence. And still, he's not backing down. For Trump, this is the storm before the calm. He says he is willing to weather it to the very end. But markets are hoping he might still change course.
I mean, he's not going to weather shit. We're acting like this is incredibly consequential for him. It seems like he's relying on his cult to stay loyal to his agenda. He don't give a fuck.
We are following the breaking news of President Trump threatening to slap
Oh, yeah, he wants to do 50% tariffs now.
China with additional tariffs. Let's go live to CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak. So, Kevin, what is the president saying about this potential escalation here?
Yeah, and it's a major escalation in this tit-for-tat tariff war between Washington and Beijing. Remember, Pam, last week President Trump applied that 35% reciprocal tariff on China. China retaliated, applying its own 34% tariff on the United States. Now President Trump saying this: if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuses by tomorrow, April the 8th, the United States will impose additional tariffs on China of 50% effective April 9th. He goes on to say that additionally, all talks with China concerning their requested meetings with us will be terminated. And I just want to break down the math for you here, Pamela, because remember, President Trump had already applied a 20% tariff on China for its role in the fentanyl crisis. He applied that 34% reciprocal tariff last week. That goes into effect later this week. Now he's threatening this additional 50% retaliatory tariff on China, this tit-for-tat back and forth. That would bring the total tariffs on China by the United States to 104%, which is a huge number. China, the world's second largest economy, one of the United States' largest trading partners. This could have a serious effect for American consumers, given the amount of goods that come into the United States. And I think just as we have seen today, the market's clearly looking for some kind of off-ramp here, for some kind of easing on the part of the president. This shows that the president is very much committed to this tariff plan, exactly not what the markets were looking for, Pamela.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, you know, the White House has been talking about how all these countries, more than 50 countries, have come and you know, reached out to the president wanting to negotiate. But the White House is also sending these mixed messages on whether the president is willing to negotiate. Where do things stand on that front?
Yeah, it seems to be this, that the president is willing to talk to these countries about potential trade deals, but that the bar will be very high for him to lift these tariffs. That seems to be the combination of what you're hearing from White House advisors today. We do know this morning that the president spoke to the Prime Minister of Japan, that country looking to ease up some of the tariffs on them, saying that they will be sending a high-level delegation to the United States to talk about trade. The president will also discuss this with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, later today. He imposed a 17% tariff on Israel last week, but in a way that's a cautionary tale. Remember, Netanyahu lifted customs duties on U.S. imports to Israel, but the president went ahead with that tariff anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's absolutely right. Kevin Liptak, thank you so much. Wolf?
All right, Pamela, I want to get some more of the breaking news right now. Joining us, Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, what do you make of the president's decision to escalate his trade war once again? Do you see any chance for an off-ramp before this gets a whole lot worse?
I don't see it coming from the President of the United States. You talk about a very strange world we live in. I'm, the liberal Democrat from Chicago, agreeing with headlines from the Wall Street Journal, the dumbest trade war in history.
Okay, first of all, that's not surprising, given the state of the modern Democratic Party. Okay? There are very few headlines that the average Democrat would disagree from the Wall Street Journal. Like, there's not a lot of disagreement there. Secondly, this is one of the few instances where, in theory, trade protectionism is appropriate, but what Trump is doing is not that. So I guess technically all sides that are against Trump in this process are kind of in the right. So even though under normal circumstances, like there isn't a lot of ideological disagreements between the average Democrat and the Wall Street Journal editorial board, this is one of the few moments where they are correct. I think there's a real ideological divide between someone like myself and all of these guys, and even we are all still looking at the situation and going, well, this is really stupid, because it is. It is stupid.
Very concerned, as are my constituents, with extraordinary cost increases, a recession, and the volatility in the markets that create uncertainty and great economic peril for our country. I think the bigger concern right now is it's part of a larger issue where this country, through the president, thinks that we can stand alone. 4% of the world's population, we're going to be less secure financially, and we're going to be more vulnerable in every other way from threats from across the seas.
I do want to start by talking about this sort of tit-for-tat trade war between the US and China. Obviously, a lot of threats in the air between both countries. Donald Trump now threatening to slap an additional 50% tariff on China if China does not pull back its 34% tariff hike. Just explain to us the potential consequences and which economy stands to lose more from this escalating trade war.
Well, it's hard to know which is going to lose more, but it's easy to tell you which consumers will lose more, and that's us, right? I mean, we consume in the United States and throughout the West huge amounts of Chinese goods for everyday life. Think about, just to take the most basic example, an iPhone, which now markets at what, $1,100.
You want to know what's ironic about all this? Democrats and Republicans alike have participated in the anti-China hawkery. So this is yet another instance where they look like fucking hypocrites, technically. Luckily, they are sheltered from the consequences of looking like hypocrites after being China hawks and then being like, but everything they make is good and we love them and our complex trade relationship is intertwined with our values and our everyday mode of existence. Like, this is great. Like, we love China, actually. Normally, most Americans, if Donald Trump was taking appropriate measures rather than this fucking insane, belligerent way that he's going about this quote-unquote trade war, this would make Democrats look really bad, because the average American would be like, so I don't get it. You guys said China was bad, and I believed you for the longest time, but now you're saying China not so bad? Like, what the fuck's happening here? So it's another situation where like the Democrats technically look hypocritical, but it doesn't really matter in this circumstance because Donald Trump's actions are so consequential in the negative direction that most people are too worried about their pocketbooks to recognize the inherent hypocrisy here.
Dollars for the newest models of them. And if you ended up doing the 50% hike on components, you're probably adding another $500 or so to that. And of course, there's everything you're looking at Walmart and much of what you're looking at on Amazon. So these would flow through. What really sort of struck me about President Trump's Truth Social posting, which was just less than an hour ago, was if you know much about the Chinese structure and about Xi Jinping, the idea of setting him a deadline to back down in 24 hours, he's not going to do that. He's not going to end up looking weaker to Donald Trump. And it's just not in the DNA of the Chinese leadership right now, because he will think that will transfer to the confrontation over Taiwan or something else. So I don't think the ultimatum strategy is likely to work.
And David, we had Rahm Emanuel on last week, and he said the irony here is here's a president who campaigned on ending all wars, and he's starting one. And he said, no, it's not a combat war involving F-16s or anything like that, but it's a trade war. And if you think about one of the purposes that free trade or any type of trade relations and trade alliances serves is to hopefully avoid physical wars as well. And you have a president now who has fired his U.S. cybersecurity chief, cyber command chief, because of a conspiracy theorist apparently reportedly coming to the White House and suggesting he's not loyal. You have a president who continues to conflate friend and foe and saying that even our friends are treating us worse than our foes. Just give us a sense of where that puts us in terms of security risks here in the United States.
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, just any reading of the history of the past century is trade conflict can frequently spill into military conflict. We've seen that happen time and time again. It was the source of the War of 1812 with Britain, right? But you also saw elements of that in World War I and so forth. Separate and apart from the history lesson here, the conflation of our adversaries with our allies is bound to come back and haunt the United States, I think. What is our greatest military strength as a country?
Once again, like, can't drop the China hawkery while simultaneously saying we need China for our cheap commodities. It's just an incomprehensible worldview. It's almost as incomprehensible as Donald Trump's. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump's actions are stupid, but at least his worldview does make sense. His worldview is at the very least consistent. He's anti-China. He wants to remove, he wants to decouple the United States and hopefully the rest of the world from their over-reliance on Chinese manufacturing. He's taking an initiative that is insane, right? And seemingly not doing anything that needs to be done before you even try this decoupling. But at least it's like in the direction of fuck China. These guys, on the other hand, are also saying fuck China while simultaneously saying, but we need China. Every part of this, everyone is wrong. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, Trump is consistent, but insane. These guys are inconsistent, insane, I guess.
Beyond our nuclear weapons, which you can't really go use. And the answer is, it's our alliance system. Who is it that we have tariffed heavily in the course of this? Japan and South Korea, who are linchpin.
Like, is the argument here that if we just instituted broad tariffs just on China and no one else, that this would be fine? Okay. Is the argument that we should also institute incredibly high tariffs on Indonesia or Bangladesh or Vietnam, because those are secondary markets for manufacturing that engage in Chinese manufacturing as well? Because in that situation, we are tariffing allies. We're implementing a penalty on our allies, but we're doing that at the behest of decoupling the world from China, or at least the United States from China. So which is it? What is it? What's happening there? This doesn't make any sense.
Pins of the effort to contain Chinese expansion, to say nothing of North Korea. Why poison that relationship? I don't know. And if the president turned around and said, well, this is about trade, not about politics, go explain what we heard over the weekend about why it was that he did not put any tariff penalties on Russia. because we're in the middle of a negotiation for peace in Ukraine. By the way, there are tariffs that were put on Ukraine. So obviously politics has entered into the setting of these tariffs, and yet not with our main allies in Europe or Asia.
Right, David Sanger, live for us there. Thank you.
Volatility and whiplash on Wall Street amid deepening economic uncertainty and growing global anxiety.
Yeah, U.S. markets opened deep in the red once again following Donald Trump's escalating trade war, but they have been fluctuating wildly for the past several hours.
Why do you think they're being inconsistent? I don't know, but I feel like I feel like what they're saying is pretty close to reality. The top line argument that Donald Trump's actions are irresponsible and seemingly for no good reason is correct. The underlying anti-China hawkery, on the other hand, makes no sense if your argument is that decoupling from China and trying to tariff both our allies and our enemies alike is stupid. Well, you can't say that then. I just described to you why that's a silly argument to make. Either you're like, why we have this complex trade relationship and over-reliance on Chinese manufacturing. Maybe the best attitude here is not to destabilize global trade in its entirety, but instead to continue forming better relations with a major power, okay, and learn to coexist instead of constantly banging on the war drums, whether it be trade war drums or cold war drums or even hot war drums, if it ever came to that. Like, instead of looking at it like that, which will never happen, of course. America will never take a stand like that, regardless of how much we rely on Chinese cheap commodities. Why learn to coexist with an expansionist nation? That's so funny, dude. Dude, if you think China is an expansionist nation, what the fuck is America? Like, what are you saying? We are the expansionist nation. We've expanded to the entire globe. What are you talking about? Especially in this day and age, right now, at this very moment. Like, it's a fucking ridiculous argument to make. Like, the hypothetical of China overtaking Taiwan, which America recognizes as a part of China, is the expansionist attitude that China is demonstrating. Meanwhile, you're talking about America that has 800 military bases all around the globe. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. What do you mean? The question you should be asking, I guess, this question should be directed at the fucking Chinese leadership. And no, that's not just Trump. Trump didn't build the military bases.
Whereas here's a look at where things stand right now. The Dow down about 700 points or so. We actually saw it briefly in the green, up about 800 points at one point today. That was because of an unfounded rumor, but now obviously solidly in the red. And it's been red arrows all day for European stocks as well after Asian markets closed down sharply earlier. But the president is showing no signs of retreating, urging Americans not to be, quote, weak or stupid and panic.
And he's now threatening to impose new 50% tariffs on China following Beijing's retaliatory tariffs last week. The White House, meantime, is downplaying the growing economic concerns.
The market will find a bottom. It will be soon. And from there, we're going to have a bullish boom.
There doesn't have to be a recession. Who knows how the market is going to react?
Who knows? Well, I think the market is reacting. I don't think you can say who knows how the market is going to react when the market is reacting. The very reason why you're on NBC News talking about who knows how the market is reacting is because we all know how the market has been reacting. It's more so a consequence of like where the bottom is and what that will look like. Who knows where the bottom is and what will happen when we reach it? That's the real question.
In a day, in a week.
You need to reset the power of the United States of America and reset it against all our allies and our enemies alike.
It's a strategy to create a golden age in America for the Americans.
Things are so bad that Dow jumped 800 points on a hallucination that the tariffs were over. Like over Twitter. If that doesn't tell you things are horrible, I don't know what to tell you. This man right here going, yep, no. That one part where he said, yeah, no, Trump is going to do what he's going to do. In response to a question about whether or not there would be a 90-day pause on tariffs, caused $3 trillion worth of value to come back to the stock market because a guy heard that, misunderstood it, wanted to be first to market on fucking Twitter, and then Reuters went along with it too. Like every mainstream outlet went along with it. Like, think about how insane this is, man. Can you give me a paywall link for this? An anonymous Twitter account sent markets reeling today. How are you going to tell me that the stock market is any different than a shit coin at this point? Like, this is insane. Everything is held together by confidence. And everything that Trump is doing is undermining said confidence. It's creating unimaginable instability and volatility, which will allow some people to make money in the short term, but that is not long-term stability. The stock market is a vibes casino. Why are you against stock market dumping? Isn't this taking from the rich? Brother, I don't care about that at all. I care about the actual consequences that it will have on the material realities of working class Americans and working class people all around the world. What the fuck are you talking about? Lighting the top 1%'s money on fire in a way where they will be able to recover from this, but you won't, because your retirement is also set on fire in the process, is not exactly a great redistribution of wealth and resources. Hello? What are you talking about? How about we take $6 trillion of value and reallocate it into redistributive policies in the form of wealth taxes? Don't you think that that would have been a much better use of the fake money that we're talking about? No, we can't do that. God forbid that's what happened in the process. That would be terrifying. We could never do that. No, it's actually awesome that we're just like burning money on fire. Fake money, fake value that existed is no longer in existence. This somehow is the only way to fuck over the rich. Meanwhile, you're getting fucked over way harder than the rich. 2/3 of Americans, adults, own stocks. Yeah, I mean, but it's nothing, okay? The problem is the top 1% own 50% of all the stocks. The bottom 50% own 1% of the stocks. So when the stock market is doing well, the top 1% are doing fantastic. But when the stock market is doing poorly, yeah, the top 1% also lose trillions of dollars sometimes of value, billions of dollars in value. But that $1 billion of value being lost for the bottom 50% of wealth is incredibly consequential, way more consequential than what it looks like for the top 1%. And it's not just the market in and of itself, because that's just your retirement fund perishing overnight. Okay? Your retirement fund perishes overnight. That sucks. It's shitty. But that's just the beginning of the hurt. The implications for the overall economy are far more dire, far more consequential for average everyday Americans. The cost of living skyrocketing is a direct consequence of these tariffs, which can be seen as a universal regressive sales tax, which harms the working poor, are far worse than the impacts that it will have for the wealthy. He was right about repeating himself. Yes, I'm going to describe this probably 1,000,000 times over, because as I've said time and time again, tariffs are an entry fee. American importers start paying said entry fee. There's retaliatory tariffs on the other side as well, which makes it less likely for these countries to also get goods from American exporters. Okay? When the cost of living goes up, people can't purchase the things that they would normally purchase. Their purchasing power goes down. When purchasing power goes down, companies start laying off workers because they no longer can grow. Okay? They no longer can maintain. They no longer can grow. They start laying off workers. That creates a depressive spiral. First through a recession and then through depression. Because when people are laid off, they have even less purchasing power and less demand overall. This is what I'm talking about in terms of Trump's actions in the short term and in the long term, destroying the American economy. Monday's trading action was bizarre in many ways, but one specific mystery about a misleading headline that sent stocks ping-ponging all over the place highlights just how fragmented and expensive access to breaking financial news can be, even at times when it really matters to retail investors. The U.S. stock market did indeed go bananas this morning, thanks to a headline that falsely claimed White House advisor Kevin Hassett had said President Donald Trump was considering a 90-day pause in tariffs. Here's the video. It's really funny. This is literally how it started. Let's watch.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide. There are more than 50 countries in negotiation with the president. We've got the prime minister of Israel coming today. We've had a reach out overnight from Taiwan. And but I would urge everyone, especially Bill, to ease off the rhetoric a little bit. The fact is that say 10% baseline tariff is on what, 14% of GDP. That's about how much trade we have, how many imports. And so 86% of GDP is affected by the deregulation and the tax cuts and everything else. And even if you think, and I think a lot of us at the White House think that these economic responses are exaggerated by critics, even if you think that there will be some negative effect from the trade side, that's still a small share of GDP. And so the idea that it's going to be a nuclear winter or something like that is completely irresponsible rhetoric.
Yeah, he started out by saying, yeah, Trump is going to do what he's going to do. That's it. That minor yeah is all it took. That minor yeah, when he was responding, not implying that Trump is indeed putting a 90-day fucking pause on tariffs, was all it took for this one Twitter account that wanted to be first to market and get as much clout as possible to create this incredibly unstable situation. CNBC anchors read out the headlines on air as they tried to explain why markets had started to soar. In all, the S&P 500 rallied nearly 6% from where it had been trading right before the mystery headline. Hasanabi is crying inside. Why? Are you okay? I'm crying inside. Stop being parasocial. Why the fuck would I be crying inside? I cover real genocide every single day, okay? Babies getting murdered every goddamn day. This right here is a sad and scary moment, but a moment of vindication regardless. For months, almost a year, I've been talking about how this was going to inevitably happen if Trump actually implemented this, saying there's no way he could potentially go through with this without any sort of scrutiny. And here we are. No one fucking knows what tariffs are until it's far too late. No one knows the impact of policies until it slams them in the fucking head. It's so goddamn annoying. Yeah. It just took 4 minutes, by the way. 4 minutes for $3.5 trillion to get into the market to that tweet. Yeah. The White House said within the hour that no one knew about the supposed plan, a rare chance to properly use the term fake news. Stocks sold off by the same amount they'd rallied and then seesawed around for a while. By mid-afternoon, they were basically flat for the day. So where exactly did the headline come from? That's a tougher question to answer than you'd think. The obvious point of contagion was the Walter Bloomberg account using the X handle Delta I1 using a capital. So did someone posting as Walter Bloomberg make up a headline to save the market, to cash out, or just to introduce some chaos into the day? If so, it'd be a little strange for the account to keep posting, mostly because that type of thing seems actionable. It also seems like it'd be a bad idea for the account to attract this type of scrutiny. As we said, it basically just copies financial breaking news headlines from news wires, and those wires often come with an extremely pricey subscription. If Hassett had done an exclusive interview about major U.S. policy decisions, he did not, probably. Only a major financial news service would have been able to get that exclusive access. The news wires don't just offer one uniform news feed either. While we aren't 100% up to speed on the latest business models, some news wires have been known to deliver news feeds to different subscribers at different speeds. This is reasonable to an extent because not all professional subscribers can use the same level of access. So it does seem possible that some experimental headline writing product or a budget subscription published a bad headline that was then picked up by the Walter Bloomberg account. There's also one less than obvious analog with reality that could have been misinterpreted by an overzealous headline writer or ahem, LLM. In a Fox and Friends interview, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett stalled by saying, yep, before saying the president is going to decide what the president is going to decide. This was obviously not confirmation, especially because he then argued that observers are overreacting to the tariff news. Another problem with that explanation is that the interview happened nearly 2 hours before Delta One published the headline. Whoever's running the account isn't helping solving the mystery either. When asked by one of his followers, he cited both Reuters and CNBC as the source of the headline. Remember, though, the CNBC anchors seem to be reading his post. One of his screen grab resources shows a Reuters Newswire headline, but that was from 10:23 a.m. and cites CNBC. Now, it's not great if CNBC flashed a headline because one of their anchors wrote a social media post that turned out to be nonsense. In their defense, however, markets had already started to take off before they read it. So it's starting to look like the main thing we've learned today is the influence of Delta One account and its 849,000 followers. Are that many traders really following an aggregator to save money? Or are markets just so hyper responsive that even an ex-anon account can cause a 6% swing? Things get even weirder. An account called Hammer Capital posted the same headline at 10:11 a.m. That's before the post from Walter Bloomberg or CNBC or any other sources we found. Hammer Capital's been on Twitter since March 2021, and we're including a screen grab of his post below in case it's deleted. We've contacted both him and Walter Bloomberg for comment. That was through DMs, though, so it's unclear whether we'll have much success. We've also contacted Reuters. They haven't responded, but did publish an advisory story withdrawn on Hass's comment on tariff pause. In that retraction, Reuters said it originally published a story because of CNBC. We've contacted CNBC for comment, and we will update anything with anything we hear. Anyway, the market has been zigzagging all over the place since this morning. That's presumably because some traders think the U.S. president can be swayed by market reactions to fake news. Or as the Quantian account puts it, so we bounced 8% on a fake headline, sold off when people realized it was fake, and then bounced again when it occurred to people that if we bounced that much on a fake headline, imagine how much we'd bounce on a hypothetical real one. Money is fake. The stock market is gambling. And it's a casino that is built around confidence in the stock market, at least reacting in a normal way, in a rational way, when human beings are obviously irrational. This heightens the contradictions of over-relying on finance like this. And this story in and of itself is a perfect demonstration that this is an untenable, unmanageable system. And here we are. It is so crazy that we have shitcoinified the stock market. In some ways, it always was. But this is the most shitcoin. It's the most like shitcoin version of the stock market. Bill Ackman on December 21st context. Bill is warning of an economic nuclear winter now. This is what he said in December 2024.
We're stepping into, I would say, the most pro-growth, pro-business, pro-American administration.
Bill A. Pac-Man, dude. Bill Smokes Crack Man.
I've perhaps seen in my my adult lifetime. Certainly, we just had a nice little ceremony, and CEOs of broad array of big American companies, and I would say everyone is incredibly enthusiastic, really about a new administration that's about efficiency, removing the impediments to growth, deregulation. We're stepping into, I would say, the most
deregulation, pro-growth. Did you see Peter Navarro just straight up rejected Vietnam's offer to drop its tariffs to zero? Peter Navarro says Vietnam's 0% tariffs offer is not enough. It's the non-tariff cheating that matters. Yeah. This is a perfect analog for a non-existing problem that we have decided is real in an effort to enforce whatever agenda that we personally have. Okay? It's perfectly analogous to deportations. Mass deportations have to happen. Why? Because of a problem that we made up. The problem is that undocumented migrants are doing a lot of crimes, and they're very violent, and they have to be deported from this country. When in reality, undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens, and also the ones that do engage in any sort of criminal activity do get swiftly processed through the system and either get deported or are sent to prison. But when you make up a problem in a system that is working to push for an agenda of mass deportations, obviously you're going to fucking deport a bunch of people who haven't done any crimes whatsoever. And the same analog is here. The real reason is not tariffs that Vietnam imposes upon the United States of America. The real problem here is, one, Vietnam being a secondary manufacturing hub for Chinese manufacturing, and also our overarching interest in decoupling U.S. trade from China in an effort to do better Cold War against China. Because obviously, if we rely on China, we can't fight China more effectively, more efficiently. And last but not least, it is the trade deficit that we have with these other countries. The reason why the global economy is designed in this way is so that they make cheap goods that we can purchase for cheap. It obviously displaces a lot of the American labor force, and the bounties of it are cheap, accessible treats. It's the treat economy, okay? And when I say treats, I mean literally treats, because agricultural output food is already expensive and is hit by inflation. It's not so bad that like Americans will fucking scream bloody murder, but the things that Americans need, like shelter, healthcare, food, those things are either succumb to hyperinflation over the past couple of decades, or are steadily increasing in prices, whereas commodities, treats, televisions, things of that nature, are unironically the only thing that has maintained some semblance of price stability and are relatively low. That's why I say it's the treat economy. The treat economy is incredibly important for American stability because it's the only bounty of American empire. That's the only thing. Here it is. Trump's tariffs explosively open up what is the central contradiction of 21st century capitalism. Internationally differentiated rates of exploitation are the only means through which the whole reproduces itself at all. Tariffs unintentionally manifest this reality in prices. There it is. How much would an iPhone cost if Apple were forced to make it in America? In the $30,000 to $100,000 range. And no, this is not a typo. I think this is an exaggeration. Okay. In fact, if Apple were forced to solely manufacture the iPhone in America, there's a good argument that it would not be able to manufacture it any at all. And if they could somehow successfully make the manufacturing transition, capacity would likely be constrained to just a few million units a year. Technically reduced in price when comparing how expensive electronics were in the past compared to the average wage. Yes. So the reality is, as I've explained over and over again, this is not about tariffs at all. This is not even about other barriers of trade at all, because the major barrier of trade is one that we have enforced in perpetuity, which is to dominate these countries either through direct war and sometimes even fucking genocidal actions, or to consistently debt trap them into making sure that they cannot develop evenly in a way that would put them at some kind of wage parity with the United States of America. Okay? That is the real reason for these trade deficits. In exchange for cheap commodities, they trade on the dollar. And that's how we maintain control over the global marketplace, because all of the transactions that are being made on the global marketplace, 80% of them is done with the dollar. And every dollar that is being, every time a dollar is used, it still goes all the way back to the United States of America and then back to the two parties that are trading with one another, even if they are not fucking trading with America directly. This is an incredibly important tool for the American empire. This is why Donald Trump also is like terrified of BRICS and the de-dollarization of the economy. Ironically enough, the only reason why there is any sort of secondary market against the dollar is also directly our same mechanisms of enforcing any sort of domination over the global south. We have purposely kept so many countries as poor as they possibly can be, underdeveloped, in an effort to continue dominating them, in an effort to continue giving them free products so that their agricultural businesses cannot develop, for example, because they can never compete with like free fucking grain, right? Or the process in which we destabilize these countries through not US aid alone, but also through the IMF and World Bank by offering them conditional loans that can only be used with foreign capital that come with a bunch of setbacks that make sure that they cannot use any of the marginal profits they generate from this process back on social safety nets and expanding on their infrastructure, developing their infrastructure. Okay. All of these are ways in which we've basically pushed away through hyper exploitation, basically pushed away the entirety of the global south, forcing them through sanctions and also this economic domination to go and collaborate with a different hegemonic power that has grown in the process. That is China. We did this, and now we complain. There was a very instructive set of articles that came out from Bloomberg and Foreign Policy magazine and numerous other Western institutions that saw the writing on the wall a long time ago. With the One Belt, One Road initiative that China implemented, a lot of Americans will say, oh, well, Chinese are doing the debt trap that we did as well, like the IMF and World Bank did. No, they offered better loans. They offered no conditions. They even forgave loans without anything else in mind, because their goals for developing Africa were not simply to exploit Africa. Sure, exploitation occurs in that process. Of course it does. But their primary goal there was to develop a secondary market if the United States of America inevitably fucking tried to decouple trade from China by force. And that's precisely what they've done. And they would never have been able to get away with this if it wasn't for the 400 years of colonial exploitation, plus the continued economic domination by IMF and the World Bank. Of course, they would go and work with China instead, especially considering that the Chinese empire had no previous history of colonial exploitation in these areas. So there it is. This is a reality that American economists also recognize as well, even by simply looking at one aspect of global domination, the IMF and the World Bank. They wrote articles a couple years ago, all of them in unison, wrote articles a couple years ago being like, Chinese loans are better than ours. They don't have conditions. We have to get better at offering competitive loans in comparison to China, because if we don't do that, then they're going to fucking steal our lunch money. And that's precisely what China did. They already did it. That's why they have a damn near monopoly on the rare minerals necessary for the next next evolution of energy, renewable energies. They dominate the battery. They dominate the battery market. They dominate the technology on that front, and they have almost complete control over the raw earth, or rather rare earth minerals necessary for the production of such technologies. China has better loans. U.S. had better aid. China was making some moves towards improving their aid to compete with USA, but now I guess they don't need to do that. I mean, U.S. aid is going to be back. It's not like the Supreme Court already stopped that. That was one of the things that they immediately stopped, that the Trump administration did. I'm sure that they'll still restrict U.S. aid whichever way they can, which seemingly I don't understand why. But also remember, U.S. aid is still a destabilizing force, because U.S. aid, aside from generating goodwill and being a soft power initiative in many of its expenditures, is also a destabilizing force in places like Somalia, where deliberately pumping the market with free agricultural output that serves the interests of our farmers here in the United States of America, which works as a secondary subsidy for American farmers, is also directly costing these other nations their sovereignty. Because if you can get it for fucking free, then there is no reason to try and develop your own agricultural output. This is a major destabilizing force. It reminds me of the Sankara quote. Why don't they reject the aid? Because they're desperate. Let me off Mr. Hassan's wild ride? No, you're getting shook. Yes, U.S. aid in that regard creates dependency. It creates dependence on American grain, American agricultural output, which creates economic instability in these countries. These countries already have the natural resources to be able to develop themselves. But if they're getting it for free, why the fuck would they ever spend the limited amount of dollars or the limited amount of power that they have on developing their own agricultural products? Let's see what Jesse Waters is saying about Howard Lutnick.
American workers are not going to be screwing in little screws to iPhones. He's saying the future is robotics. He's saying the future is AI, automation, and robotics. So you're going to have these massive...
You know what the irony here is? They're not technically wrong in terms of automation and AI for manufacturing. But the problem is, even then, America is not going to be able to uplift its working class. There is still going to be even more economic instability in the United States of America, because technological improvements under capitalist organizations of the economy are a mechanism to displace the existing labor force. It is not a mechanism to lift the burden of the labor force. It is not a mechanism that allows the existing labor force to make more while doing less work and make more money in the process, because the profits are not given back to the workers under any of these circumstances. Profits go to the capital owners. Profits in this process imply that you can make 2 guys do the work of 10 guys. So you don't end up making 10 guys do the work, or you don't evenly distribute the less work now amongst the 10. You just fire 8 and make the 2 do the rest of the work. That is what has happened through the classic graph that leftists love to show, which is productivity skyrocketing since the 80s while wages remaining stagnant. And in that process, profits have also increased steadily, despite the fact that automation is supposed to make profit margins slimmer and slimmer. That's it. That's the problem. So even if we were to somehow magically bring back manufacturing here and build these factories and ironically enough, rely on foreign capital to spend trillions of dollars on U.S. soil for some reason, instead of just like trying to wait out this administration, wait its collapse, and then continue doing global trade in the ways that they used to, they're just going to go, okay, oops, we have to now build fucking manufacturing hubs in the United States of America by using our money, our foreign capital in the U.S., and then those factories are going to be all automated, a technology that like is improving but still doesn't fucking fully exist. And in the process, none of that wealth and none of those resources are going to go back to the fucking workers. How do you think this is a system? How do you think this is a system that can continue? It's not. That's the major difference between China and the United States of America, because they don't have the same attitude towards redistributing the bounties of becoming a manufacturing hub on the world. That's a major difference. You might think China is not really a transitional socialist state or not, but it doesn't matter. The proof is in the process. The proof is in the Chinese development that has taken place over the course of the past couple of decades. That's it. And that is the reason why China is so dominant. Because if you look at it in reductive terms and compare foreign capital going to a destabilized, formerly colonized nation, and that nation moving in the direction of neoliberalism versus that nation moving in the direction of a transitional socialist state with Chinese characteristics, you can make this reductive comparison between China and India. One country has engaged in even development and has a long-term stable agenda of growth and can react to the market shocks that take place, okay, while still operating as though it's a capitalist country with billionaires and corporations, okay? Whereas the other is a neoliberal nation. There is no even development, and income inequality and wealth disparity skyrockets in the process, and it can't make these long-term plans. It can't set these long-term plans in motion and develop in the same way. That's it.
High-tech manufacturing sector that's going to be building cars, airplanes, data centers, and you're going to need American blue-collar workers to service these robots, build the robots, and maintain them and operate them. If we're going to have ships, if we're going to have new weapons for the next century, that's the game. Take a breath.
You have a crazy distracting echo going on? No, I do not. Remember when Elon praises Chinese workers, says Americans trying to avoid work. I mean, this is a classic. This was also reflected in the famous Obama documentary. What was it called? Was it called The Factory or something? I remember, where Americans destabilized its own domestic labor so much that a Chinese company could come back to America and open up a facility, and just for like the good nature, just for the marketing bonuses, they could open up a facility in the United States of America. Oh, the documentary was called American Factory. Now, of course, that didn't work out, right? But in that process, they said the exact same things. They were like, the Chinese workers work so hard. American workers don't want to work hard. That could have never happened if it wasn't for rapid urbanization and even development in China. That would have never happened, even for marketing purposes. Even as a demonstration of good faith, the idea that like a Chinese company would come and open up a facility to hire American workers to do manufacturing in the United States of America is unheard of, is unimaginable 30, 40 years ago. So people that point to other things, people that point to other reasons are failing to comprehend what the major difference here is. The major difference here is that they have a very different method of approaching capitalism. They'll use capitalism, they'll use global trade as a mechanism to advance their own personal domestic agendas, their own personal international agendas. China will. But what they do with that capital is very different than what America does with that capital. And it goes back to the same thing I say all the time. America, the American government, is incredibly powerful, but the American government works at the behest of corporations. The Chinese government is also very powerful, but in China, the corporations work at the behest of the government. That's it. And as far as like, wasn't China able to, what is it? Yeah, wasn't a lot of China's infrastructure built upon unpaid and child labor? That's a great question. The answer is both yes and no. Okay. But it's ironic because that's every fucking economy. What do you think chattel slavery was? What do you think colonial exploitation was for centuries? China had a brief period of development recognizing the benefits of utilizing its manpower for a couple decades and then taking all of that foreign capital and rebuilding itself. The only difference here is that China, as a developing nation, had a plan. China, as a developing nation, had a plan to do something with the capital that came in, with central planning. That's why I compared it to India, because comparing China to the United States of America is really funny in that process. Obviously, one is like a hyper-exploitative nation. The other one is a hyper-exploited nation. That is the major difference here. You know, BYD is working on a huge factory an hour east of you in the desert. I worked on their plans. Nice. Amazing. It's also ironic because America used Chinese labor initially to build the skeleton of the infrastructure that we still use, like the railroads. You know what I mean? There is not a group of people on this planet that we have not exploited, including Chinese labor. So, you know, Tim Cook has talked about this before. It's not just about lower wages in China. Tim Cook has said he would make it in China. Tim Cook has said he would make it in China still, even with the same American wages. China has an infrastructure that allows efficiency in manufacturing. China has a huge, highly educated workforce. Americans just assume they are the best at everything and think of all other countries as just do dumping and child slave labor. Exactly. The memes about Chinese manufacturing being dog shit are like a 90s reference. Okay? It is no different right now than thinking about ghost cities and saying, well, China has ghost cities. They just like build ghost cities with tofu dregs, and those things are unstable. Like, yeah, dude, you're operating on 90s propaganda. You're operating on things that may have had some semblance of truth in the past, but is certainly not the case now. China is interesting because the same exact factory is capable of giving you $1 t-shirts and capable of giving you $40 t-shirts. That's what China does. They don't give a fuck. You want a $1 t-shirt? We'll give you the dog shit $1 t-shirt. You want a $40 t-shirt that's like hand sewn? We'll give you that. It doesn't matter. Same with electronics. Same with every commodity. But in that process, they were able to build this manufacturing hub. And that takes years and years and years. This is also correct. That's why I said it's reductive, Arun. The India versus China analogy begins to break down because the thing is, India as a whole has never afforded the opportunity to engage in manufacturing to the same degree as China has been afforded. On top of that, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh was devastated by the UK far more than, yes, this is also absolutely correct, that they were far more devastated than China ever was. There is some fault to be placed on the Indian government for sure, but the starting point for both countries is very different. Yes, that's why I also acknowledge that this is a reductive comparison. So you are absolutely correct on that. However, you know, China also overcame great, not to say that it was to the same degree as India, but, you know, it's not like China's starting point was good either. But you're absolutely correct that, yes, there are other reasons as to why India and China did not develop in the same exact ways. But I think ultimately, that's why I recognize that it's a reductive statement. But it is a comparison nonetheless because of, because what I think would have happened if India was also a command economy that had the ideological background and the initiative. Like if India was like a Maoist country, ironically enough, I think that it would have developed very differently. India also has internal issues in comparison to China, whereas like China is a nation of Han Chinese individuals. It's comprised of the Han Chinese. That is a ethno-nationalist association slapped on to an incredibly diverse group of people, where people go, I'm Chinese, I'm Han Chinese. You're in fucking Taiwan, you're still Han Chinese. You say you're Taiwanese, but you still understand that you're Han Chinese. As opposed to in India, there's an incredible amount of diversity and, dare I say, warring factions. And on top of that, a caste system too. Agree, when the USSR collapsed, India was put in a position where they were forced to be a service sector economy for the West. Yeah. India also has India has a highly educated workforce as well. Chinese people are less diverse than Indians. That's not true. The difference between China and India in that regard is, like I said, Han Chinese as a designation is a broad identifier over a group of incredibly diverse people that speak virtually different languages, have different cultural customs, have literally different racial traits in terms of like height disparities. If you look at the northern Chinese population, they're significantly taller than the southern Chinese population. And yet every single person is considered Han Chinese. Different cuisines, different customs, different cultural signifiers, and yet it's all Han Chinese. So from the outside, we look at that and we go, well, that's fucking, this 90% of China is Han Chinese. What are you talking about? But like, the Han Chinese is ginormous and has many differences. Like myself, a white Chinese man. Dude, come on, Northern Indians are completely different than South Indians, or different complexion, different language, different people. No, I know, dude. I don't think the ethno-linguistic diversity of India has anything to do with its economic position compared to China. That position is idiotic Hindu nationalist take. No, I know. I'm not saying that like Modi's Hindufication initiatives are actually a good thing. Because one is done through dominance. The other one is through a national identity that was developed. An ethno-national identity that was developed. Where it's not like Han Chinese in the north are oppressed by the Han Chinese in the south. It's more so that it's basically like American differences between Irish Americans and German Americans, if that makes sense. They're all white. But they're all white Americans, but they have different cultural customs, and ultimately it's a distinction without a difference. It doesn't mean anything. That's simply what I'm saying. Han Chinese is like saying white in Europe or white in America. Yeah. The greatest period of growth in China, build the largest HSR network, high-speed rail network on earth. My state is an example of how the U.S. deploys capital development. We took billions in oil subsidies and built prisons for cheap/free labor for corporations, and all we have to show is ranking 50th in the economy. Good luck explaining this to anyone. I think it's a decent comparison. It's not like, my suggestion is not like a forcible Hindufication of India in the and like Modi's desire to do so. That's not what I'm saying, because that's like obviously incredibly violent and incredibly oppressive. I did a paper on comparison of India and China for my BA undergrad honors thesis. Ultimately, it came down to the political economy of China, which was more conducive to development than Indian political economy. Indian political economy struggled competition within intrastate borders, unlike China. The drive that central government in China could initiate was simply not present in India. Yeah, I think also, yes, land reforms worked in favor of that. I think that one of the important distinctions within Maoist thought is eroding all of the other distinctions in favor of the class distinction. This plays a big role in unifying people, in helping people recognize that they are united on the same class boundaries. That's it. That plays a major role. It's like developing. That's why I always try to instill class consciousness amongst the working class in the United States of America, because then they are no longer divided along other boundaries, but instead simply divided along a materialist framework in which they recognize their class position and choose to reorient society in a way that favors the working class. A dictatorship of the proletariat rather than the dictatorship of the bourgeois capital owners. Indians hate communists, though. That's such a funny thing to say when you think about one of the most robust and one of the largest communist political systems on the planet. Western liberals will turn around and be like, Indians hate communism, bro. What are you talking about? Like, that's so stupid. Like, yeah, dude, what kind of communist party do you have in America? What kind of motion does your communist party have? What kind of workers' movement do we have in America talking about how India hates communists? It's hilarious. Anyway, let's hear what this dingus had to say about Vietnam.
A number of countries reportedly reaching out to negotiate tariffs with President Trump over the weekend. Joining us now with the latest, President Trump's senior trade and manufacturing advisor, Peter Navarro. And given the backdrop, Peter, of what we've seen, the tumult in the markets, and the S&P could theoretically be in bear market territory. And I know you make the distinction between Main Street and Wall Street, but obviously they're interconnected. So to get the real story on how many countries are calling and on whether the president is actually agreeable is important, because we've heard all these countries are making the phone call, but then we hear that maybe the president isn't interested at this point. Can you clear that up?
Sure, Joe, but let me first take you back in a time capsule, because this feels a lot like the day after the election in 2016. And I don't know if you remember that day, but I was on the set with you. The futures were dead red down. And I made the prediction that the Dow would hit 25,000. And Andrew's head exploded. It's like, well, but you correctly pointed out that wasn't that heavy a lift. And we did hit that, not in 4 years, but in less than 2 years. And what I'm seeing, Joe, is a beautiful situation where we will hit 50,000 on the Dow, and we're going to have a broad-based recovery in the S&P 500. The market's trying to find its bottom now. The thing I would say to retail investors.
Yeah. You don't understand. They're just trying to find the bottom. It could, that's all it is. Because when you hit the bottom, the only place you can go from there is up. It's simple. You see, it's simple. Okay? It's all about finding the bottom. It's all about getting to a place where the only place you can go is up from that point on. You know? Thank you.
Is don't get panicked out by all of this.
I love that they're also, like, Trump is trying to reinstill confidence in the market and stop people from, like, panic selling. But because of how unstable his administration is, they can't even come out and demonstrate the messaging discipline necessary to make sure that people have confidence in them and therefore the market. Come on, guys. Everything's going to be good. Trust me. Yeah. You know what would be really good? When you make short selling illegal. Yeah, we're going to listen. This is not a circuit breaker. Okay. What I'm describing to you is actually simply not being patriotic, because what is more patriotic than demonstrating diamond hands on the blossoming American economy? Which is why we've now made it illegal to sell. The moment that we hit that point is the moment where we're in 2008 territory. We're not there yet somehow, but that's where this is like, it's over. It's the point of no return. And I think what may have caused a stay of execution, here, unironically, is the one random guy being like, yeah, they're putting a pause on the tariffs, and the immediate breathing room that it gave a lot of these retail and institutional investors.
And what the president could have added to that fine truth was the fact that the biggest tax cut in American history, the broadest base tax cut in American history, is coming within a matter of months. So any discussion of recession seems silly when you factor that in. Plus, the Fed is not going to do its job, but the long bond is doing it. We're lowering our oil prices, which is just amazing.
Right.
And here's the one other thing I want to say macro-wise, Joe, because look, this is all about people worried about global recession. That's what they're worried about. The restructuring that's going to happen, Joe, globally, is going to start with China and Vietnam and Germany, heavily export-dependent countries. They're going to have to engage significant fiscal stimulus to reorient their economy. So that thing is going to go on. In the meantime, we're going to boom here.
I think they're much bigger than most people thought. And I think from policy institutes on both sides of the aisle, the methodology that was used has been universally derided as being non-serious. I don't know whether you know exactly who came up with the formula, but it allowed you to at least characterize most of these countries as being.
He's like, I didn't come up with the formula. A very famous economist by the name of, what was his name? Ron Anavar or something. What's the meme about this fucking asshole who basically did an anagram for his name in his books and constantly pointed to some other guy whose work he was relying on. And it turns out Ron Vera, Peter Navarro, came up with a fake guy named Ron Vera, which is an anagram of his name, and heavily relied on this other person to prove his theories. The other person did not exist. The other person was himself, which is hilarious because, one, he didn't even try to make up like a totally different name. Ron Vera is just a direct anagram. And two, that's exactly what Donald Trump did as well in the past. Donald Trump famously would make phone calls as someone entirely different when it was him behind the fucking phone. These guys are so funny, dude. They do alter ego shit. It's awesome. The other person existed. He just wasn't an economist. I thought Ron Vera was a made up guy. Yeah, Trump's alter ego was John Barron, right? Yeah.
Their tariffs well above the reality of the situation, so that when you say that we're going to do half on them, it was much higher than anyone anticipated. And I think you'd have to concede that this was not the market reaction you were looking for. There's a way of maybe incrementally trying to accomplish some of the things that the president wants to do in a reasonable, serious way. And this just almost across the board has caused what you're seeing in the stock.
A publishing company plans to add an advisory note to future copies of a book written by White House advisor Peter Navarro after it was revealed that Navarro fabricated one of the people he quoted. The character Ron Vera appears in Navarro's 2011 book, Death by China, offering dire warnings about Chinese imports. Only the Chinese can turn a leather sofa into an acid bath, a baby crib into a lethal weapon, and a cell phone battery into a heart-piercing shrapnel, Vera is quoted as saying. But while the book is not supposed to be fiction, Vera is a made-up character. Ron Vera is an anagram of Navarro, said Tom Bartlett, a journalist who exposed the ruse in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Vera appears in half of a dozen of Navarro's books dating to 2001. Navarro, who directs the White House Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy, defended the fabrication as a whimsical device. At no time was the character used improperly as a fact source, he wrote in an email. It's just a fun device. Bartlett grew curious about Vera after being alerted to the character by Tessa Morris Suzuki, a professor emeritus at the Australian National University. She's an Asia scholar and was working on an essay about the rather heated rhetoric of Peter Navarro towards China, Bartlett said. While Vera is described in one of the books as a doctoral student at Harvard, as Navarro himself had been, the school had no record of him. Eventually, Greg Autry, who co-authored Death by China, acknowledged that Navarro made the character up. It's refreshing that somebody finally figured out an inside joke that has been hiding in plain sight for years, Navarro wrote in his email. I was just memeing. Except his memeing ass that wrote these books are now directly guiding Trump's trade policy. And it actually played a formative role in Trump's trade policy in the first Trump term as well. This time, though, Trump has more power and has more means of enforcement. America's more destabilized and also, weirdly enough, more comfortable with a guy like Donald Trump. So now he's one of the figureheads of this whole process, this whole like tariff war shit. How awesome. As she puts it, the joke wears very thin when you get to certain statements about China and the Chinese people that are quite negative, Bartlett said. Ron Vera says things that are pretty over the top, and it's hard to construe them necessarily as whimsical. Navarro's publisher, Prentice Hall, and its parent company, Pearson, were also in the dark about the invented character until this week. Overland said Pearson plans to add a publisher's note to future editions. And as we already discussed, the episode is not likely to cause Navarro any grief with his boss. However, Donald Trump famously invented his own fictional spokesman, John Barron, in the 1980s. Internet wags have joked that perhaps Barron could offer some PR advice to the newly unmasked Vera. Amazing. White House aide Stephen Murren has an elaborate comparison for why the U.S. can force other countries to stomach the tariffs. He says to think of a property tax increase levied by a town. If you're a prospective buyer of a home in that town, maybe you can instead buy elsewhere. You have the leverage to escape the incidence of the new tax. By contrast, if you have someone who has to sell a home, you're inflexible. You have to eat the cost of the higher property tax. Similarly, Mirren says China has trained its workers to sell to U.S. consumer markets. They can't go anywhere else, so they have to eat the cost of our tariffs on them, Mirren said. Except, even if China eats some of the cost of the tariffs, the Americans will have to pay for the rest of the cost of the tariffs. The American importers will pay the entry fee themselves. Then they will carry that cost on to the consumers, which will lead to a price increase. Miranda Gavin Bade on why Navarro and other White House advisors appear to be giving conflicting signals on the viability of negotiations. There are conflicting narratives because everyone's got an opinion. That's fine. Disagreement is how you can avoid groupthink, and I think that's very healthy. Amazing. Meanwhile, they need to demonstrate messaging discipline at the top because everyone is relying on their every word right now to see where things are going to head. So ironically enough, the instability demonstrated through a lack of messaging discipline at the administration is also further causing the markets to collapse. Incredible. Awesome. They have the wrong initiative, and they're also doing it in the most hilariously incompetent manner possible, which is further increasing the volatility. Good stuff, guys.
Stock market.
I feel liberated. I feel liberated. Who needs money anyway? Okay, let's be real. You don't need to retire. You were never going to anyway. It's awesome. It's cool. It's fucking, dude, grind set is good. Okay, it's just going to make you grind harder.
And a lot of head scratching and head shaking on whether anyone really knows what they're doing in this case, Peter.
All right, well,
Can you at least acknowledge that?
Sure. No, I can't, because here's what I'm seeing. You're throwing a lot of stuff at me. First of all, the methodology was perfectly sound. It was done by the Council of Economic Advisors based on long-term studies that are in the academic literature. And the people taking pot shots at us are the same people that always take pot.
Don't you dare say you're tired of winning. Trump already accounted for that. He said, we're going to be winning so much. You're going to say, please, sir, no more winning. And I'll say, we're going to keep winning.
The American Enterprise Institute, Peter.
Of course. Joe, come on. The American Enterprise Institute has been against it.
Conservative, Larry Lindsay.
Let's not get buried down in those weeds now. You asked me a serious question. Was the president willing to negotiate? What we have here is a national emergency based on massive.
This chatter asks a very important question. He says, I don't get it. Did people think stonk go up forever? Capitalism dictates that, yes, stonk must go up forever. That's at the heart of one of these contradictions, one of these issues within capitalism. Yes. The answer to your question, Kaka Wizard, is yes. It's not correct, but yes, capitalism requires perma-profit and perma-growth. That is kind of at the heart of my disagreements with the way that we manage the economy, with the way that we operate currently. It's kind of the underpinning of virtually every policy decision that the American government makes, virtually every decision that every other government makes. So yes, chatter arriving at incredibly important texts from a very long time ago on his own, going, this doesn't seem to be a stable way to do business.
Chronic trade deficit caused by systematically higher tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So when you ask if we're willing to negotiate, the president will always listen. But let's understand what the problem is. When you have a country like Vietnam, let's take Vietnam. When they come to us and say,
free Ukraine is right. That's what Trump is doing. Trump is freeing Ukraine from the treacherous nature of sovereignty. Just like Trump is liberating everybody from having to worry about finances or having money in their pocket, you know, more money, more problems type shit. He's also liberating Ukraine from, having any semblance of sovereignty ever again. It's very cool how he's liberating everybody. Yeah, he's liberating Ukraine from the limited amount of resources that it already had. He's just creating stability this way.
We'll go to zero tariffs. That means nothing to us because it's the non-tariff cheating that matters. Let's do Vietnam, Joe. They sell us $15 for every $1 we sell them. About $5 of that 15 is China transshipping to Vietnam to evade their.
Yeah, see, he's saying exactly what I've been explaining to you. There's a reason why. There's a reason why you can't just put tariffs on China and then be like, and that's right, we did it. We did the damn thing. You have to also tariff the allies that have played an important role in trying to undermine China's regional power, okay? Because China has moved manufacturing to those other countries, partially because they have developed too much and they can't have the same exploitative wages any longer. Okay, that's one of the reasons. The other is to avoid the sanctions war that Donald Trump wanted to implement against China. So now it has moved its manufacturing facilities elsewhere. So you got to fucking tariff those countries too.
Tariffs.
Why don't you just go after those shippers?
What does Vietnam do? They dump into our markets, killing our shrimpers, our people who make metal brackets, kitchen cabinets, agricultural products. They engage in intellectual property theft. They have the biggest number of cases aside from China at the Department of Commerce on the dumping. So the point is, anybody who wants to come to talk to us about lowering your non-tariff barriers. Vietnam has a 10% VAT. Europe has a 19% VAT. We can't compete against that. We have tried at the World Trade Organization to get, Andrew, let me just make this point. We have tried at the World Trade Organization since the 1970s to get VAT tax relief, and they've told us no every single time. We've won case after case at the World Trade Organization on things like our agricultural products, pork, beef, and other and corn. Peter, and they just blow us off.
Vietnam's 0% tariff offer is not enough. It's the non-tariff cheating that matters. What is the non-tariff cheating? I don't know. Just stuff. Yeah, reporter, the EU has said they offered 0 for 0 tariffs on cars and industrial goods. Is that not enough? Trump says, no, it's not.
It said that they have offered 0 for 0 tariffs on cars and industrial goods. Is that not enough? Well, the EU...
Like, okay, so in the past, whenever a foreign corporation went to a new market, a smaller country that wanted to maintain some semblance of sovereignty over its own domestic affairs, and they wanted to dominate that marketplace, the country would sometimes take initiatives like, what's the famous case? Like Philip Morris, I believe. Was it with Vietnam or Philippines? Like, let's say you have a product and a country is like, yeah, your product is poisonous, even though, we'll allow it to be sold. We have to put like safety stickers on it or something, right? And hold on one second. Under normal circumstances, someone has to get in there and settle a trade dispute. I'm forgetting the actual. There's a real one that I'm talking about, but I don't know exactly what it was. But yok, sıkıntı yok. Who cooks for you? My billionaire father. Huh? Thank you. What was I saying? What was I talking about? Oh, what America's basically trying to do in this situation is also violate other countries' sovereignty. Like, let's say that there is like restrictions on what kind of there's different sets of regulations. It's not universal around the planet. Like, for example, the European Union has a higher standard. Oh, it was Philip Morris suing the Australian government for warnings on cigarette packages. Thank you, chatter. VATs are not trade barriers. Exactly. It's not. They're applied to domestically produced goods and imports. This guy's a moron. I don't think he's a moron. I think he's just lying, for the record. I don't think these guys actually think VATs are I think that they're just saying everything is a tariff because Donald Trump is fucking decided that like tariffs is the way that he is going to try to force other countries into purchasing their goods and even violate their own regulatory agencies. That's it. So I don't think it's because they're stupid and they think VAT is a fucking tariff, especially because VAT is not even the reason why they made this calculation. The White House made it seem as though there were other unfair trade practices, currency manipulation, and other unfair trade practices that was the reason for their calculation. And then they revealed what their calculation was, and it wasn't any of those things at all. The foreign restriction, foreign barriers for trade was not even remotely a part of the calculation. The calculation simply was done on the boundaries of trade deficits. That's what's so funny about it. So they're not even lying in a decent way. They haven't even figured out what they're saying. They just simply say everything is tariffs, when in fact it has nothing to do with tariffs and everything to do with trade deficits. So they want to violate other countries' sovereignties over their own regulatory agencies. Not only are we crippling our own regulatory bodies, We're by force and through threats trying to make it so that other countries don't have restrictions on what they serve their citizens. It is utterly ridiculous. One of the funniest examples of this would be to try to forcibly sell countries that simply could not sustain within their infrastructure American cars like F-150, the Ford F-150. Right now, there are Ford vehicles in the EU. They're just not the F-150, right? But an example of this would be to say, well, we have a lot of F-150 development capabilities, and we want you to purchase our F-150s as well. We want you to purchase fleets of our Ford F-150 trucks. The problem is those roads cannot fucking sustain Ford F-150s. They're just not big enough. In many European countries, the F-150 is a totally separate commercial vehicle because of its engine size. And it literally would not fit in the regular roads as well in an average European city. So imagine forcing them to purchase that. That would be a way to make up for the trade deficit. It's impossible. It's just something that they couldn't do.
No, it's not. The EU has been very tough over the years. I always say it was formed to really do damage to the United States in trade. That's the reason it was formed. It was formed with all of the countries from Europe, I guess most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And they formed together to create a little bit of a monopoly situation, to create a unified force against the United States for trade. So they have NATO, which is largely the same countries, and they took advantage of us dollar-wise and militarily until I got there. You know, I was able to get $600 billion from NATO.
Mr. President, you said it may take... The EU has said that they have offered 0 for 0.
Fantastic. These 5 options, according to Steve Moran. White House aide Steve Moran outlines 5 potential responses for foreign nations can undertake in response to our problems, he says, are caused by U.S. dollar dominance. Foreign countries could accept tariffs without retaliation, giving U.S. revenue. Wait, hold on. I'm going to get to this in a second. Let's just watch this real quick, and I'll get to the 5 policies.
Strategy with no details. All these advisors seem to be talking past each other.
Look at his face.
Richard,
his head buried in his hands, literally.
And it's only Monday.
There doesn't have to be a recession, says the U.S. Treasury Secretary. He's right. There doesn't have to be a recession. The only problem is economic circumstances have now been put in place that most Wall Street economists of senior note say are likely to cause a recession. Goldman and others now say it's up to 60%. By the way, can we go back to the Dow Jones actual chart of the day, please? Just go back to that moment. Now, you see that green spike? That is where there was a rumor that the administration was going to pause by 90 days the tariffs. Well, it was just a rumor, and the market found it was a rumor and then promptly turned in the absolute opposite direction. But now let's forget rumors. Now we have a fact. Donald Trump says he's going to increase by 50% the tariffs on China tomorrow because they've had the temerity to retaliate with the 34% tit for tat that they did. So you want a trade war? This is what it looks like. And you remember Scott Bessent's words, there doesn't have to be a recession. By the way, all the rest, Howard Lutnick's comments, the economic advisor's comments, Navarro's comments, that's all just hyperbole. That's all just basically, it's going to be great, it's going to be marvelous, it's going to be fantastic, it's going to be wonderful, it's going to...
Also, you know what else is wonderful? Subscribing to the Hasanabi broadcast to show your support. This broadcast is sponsored by viewers like you for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Because no matter what the tariff war looks like, the price of a subscription is still the same. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. It's not kokorech. This is a different. He made kofta this time. At the top of the hour. Obviously, don't break the bank. If you don't have the capacity to do so, then yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, the Hasanabi public broadcast.
Boom, it's going. But this is the reality. And at some point, ladies and gentlemen, at some point, there is so much disruption that the market simply can't take it. And jobs go, investment stops,
thank you for 25
the recession
subs.
happens.
Let's not forget, Richard, that this is an administration that inherited a rather robust economy where we were seeing inflation continue to go down, though not fast enough. We got a strong jobs report. Obviously, that is backward looking. But to have administration officials, specifically Stephen Miller, go out on the airwaves this weekend and justify these tariffs as a need for a global reset because this administration inherited a recession or near depression is outright fabrication.
No, it's lies. Simple. Let's just call it what it is. It's lies. It's not true. The economy that Joe Biden handed over to Donald Trump was in fine fettle. Interest rates were coming down, not as fast as they'd like. Unemployment was low. Growth was medium to strong, trend growth. The market was at record highs. It's quite simple. These are facts you cannot ignore. These policies, and it's not just, by the way, the policy of this.
No, this is fucking copium. And I hate it. It's my least favorite type of copium. This is only true because you're looking at the situation right now in front of us and going, well, it's a lot worse now. It's the same principle behind how like liberals will turn around and look back at like the Bush administration with rose-tinted glasses and say, well, you know, at least it wasn't as bad as Trump. That's not the case. The exact same economic anxieties that plagued the American working class in perpetuity that caused Donald Trump to win in 2016 were very much not addressed. Just because the economy seemingly was rebounding from the COVID shock doesn't change that reality. These guys come into power saying they're going to fix it and then don't do it. And then we only have the current administration's awfulness to compare to the past administration. Incorrect use of in perpetuity? Wait, what do you mean? Why is that an incorrect use? In a perpetual state. How is that an incorrect use? Wait, what the fuck?
Because workers won't be available. Companies are putting off decisions because they simply don't know the circumstance under which they will make. Now, is Donald Trump right in his policy prescription? Let's just, for the purpose of just my answer, let's assume it's a leap of faith. You have to say it is a leap of faith that he is right vis-a-vis all the conventional wisdom that says this is going to be bad for the growth. Now, if I tell you don't drive with blinkers on or don't drive with something over your eyes, you'd probably say it's not a good idea. But somebody says try it, you take your choice.
A leap of faith based on one man's convictions, right? Which he's held for decades.
But hang on. He held these convictions back in the 1980s. The global schemes and the global trading environment is very different to today than it was then. And it's not the policy that's wrong. You can even Ngozi at the WTO says that the US has legitimate concerns. It's the manufacture of the execution that's the difficulty. And the deeper this goes, the harder it's going to be to repair the damage. Simple as that.
No doubt. Richard Quest, thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
I do find it really strange that Trump's belligerent way of tackling this issue has, in a weird way, caused a lot of neoliberals to openly admit the impact of free trade agreements on domestic manufacturing, something that they would never readily admit. And their lack of recognition of that is unironically the reason why Donald Trump won in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. Why is it that this is what it took for people to be like, well, you know, he is making the correct point. He's just going about it the wrong way. It's so frustrating.
A taste of what these White House and cabinet officials said on the Sunday shows and today, trying to defend what Trump is trying to do and trying to explain what he's trying to do.
I've seen some deals that are great, and President Trump is going to decide if they're great enough.
Listen, we've got 50 countries that are burning the phone lines into the White House up, and probably the president's cell phone as well.
There is no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks.
So when you say to me, Ed, what do we want from them? We want fairness.
I mean, at the end of the day, the overriding theme is
I mean, if that was your goal, you could have just said you're going to drop the fucking nuclear red button on the planet. I'm sure foreign leaders would call you in a panic then too. Like, is that all? Is that the takeaway here? The most annoying person in your class says publicly that they're going to fucking commit suicide. And then everybody starts calling them to be like, hey, don't do that, please. And it's like, haha, see, I did it. I just wanted attention from all of you. I'm glad that you're giving it to me. Like, that's the point here? Is that what we're doing? What an insanely childish way to go about business. So fucking stupid, man.
Just trust Trump.
Yes, though I will say we are starting to see a little bit of a division even among Trump officials. Obviously, there's nobody that speaks for the Trump administration that is going to outright criticize the president's overall strategy here. But I think in addition to the officials that are saying, look, you got to just trust that he knows what he's doing. We have to give this time. This is ultimately going to end up in a good place in the medium to long term. We're seeing an emphasis on the countries that are wanting to negotiate, essentially officials that are coming out and saying, it's not the worst idea. If you're interested in negotiating, the time is now. I think those are two distinctly different views. You talked about two camps existing in the Trump world. There's the idea that what Trump is doing right now is going to eventually course correct on its own. And then there's a separate idea that these negotiations need to happen in order for that to happen. I'm not sure exactly where President Trump falls right now. I don't think that most people know, and that's obviously the key thing. And I think it's also why we should be watching Netanyahu's visit to the White House really closely. Does he come out of there having effectively negotiated and gotten himself a better deal?
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's not just two camps existing in Trump world. Trump has said both things in different social media posts. You know, he'll say these tariffs are here to stay. We're going to reconfigure the U.S. economy. We're going to bring more manufacturing domestically. This is about a complete.
I love it. We're officially at the stage where liberal thinkers are also doing the, is this 5D chess? Everyone inevitably arrives at Trump 1. This is exactly what used to happen all the time, the sane washing of Trump. There's a coherent worldview there. I think in some ways that is what Trump is relying on, which is that these people have far too much to lose if the entire system collapses. So they have to maintain the notion that Donald Trump is actually still sane and is, we just disagree with his methods or something.
Reset. But then in a different post, he'll say, look at all these countries coming to negotiate. My plan is working. So I think that's where the business leaders are saying, well, what can we trust when we don't quite know the plan, because it can't necessarily be both things. Are these tariffs a negotiating tool, which means they may be temporary and there will be pain, but it could pay off in the long term? Or are these tariffs about moving manufacturing into the U.S., which will be a long-term problem for a lot of these business leaders, and they don't necessarily want to hear that. I also think saying both allows some of these Republican leaders, it buys them time because they can say, hey, this is just a negotiating tool. We're going to wait it out.
I've talked to a lot of those business executives, some of whom are in touch directly with the White House about what this is going to look like. And they're saying, hey, we would rather pay or pass on to consumers $20 million in tariffs than spend $5 billion to build a new factory in a country with whom we don't know what relations are going to look like in the next administration or under the next party's leadership. And they are very frustrated because during Trump's first term, where he was primarily targeting China, a lot of them moved their factories to Vietnam. And they're saying, hey, wait a second, we did this for you in 2019, and now Vietnam's getting hit with the 46% tariff. What are we supposed to do? We're just going to ride this out.
And, meantime, there's the optics of all this, right? Trump is always concerned about how he's viewed in the media and the like. And the message that they wanted to send, this was a decision by Trump and his team, is to tell folks about his golf game this weekend.
How was the golf tournament?
Very good, because I won. It's good to win. You heard I won, right? Did you hear I won? Just to back it up there, I won.
And then on Saturday, as these tariffs were going out, they decided, the White House put out a statement saying that the president won his second-round matchup of the Senior Club Championship today in Jupiter, Florida, and advances to the championship round tomorrow. Sometimes presidents, if they're in the middle of economic turmoil, maybe they would go to a factory or something or try to make their case publicly. Trump he's doing what he's doing.
You know, that does go hand in hand with a strategy. If there was a coherent strategy we all understood, that would fit with it. Having the president be completely unbothered, not going on TV to calm the markets, saying, no, the markets are going to figure out what I'm doing sooner or later. It's everything else that you were just talking about. He is going golfing while we are figuring out if this is worth investing in, if we're willing to plan for 4 years ahead or not.
Friend of the show, Dave Weigel on CNN.
I don't think that is necessarily a bad look for what he's trying to do. The lack of clarity is on what he's trying to do.
已经阐明了严正的立场，宣布对包括
Talk to him, Lynch.
滥食关税，严重侵犯了
China this time hit back quite fast and strong, imposing the same 34% tariff rate on all U.S. products entering the country. And on top of that, it also put 7 more rare earth minerals into its export control list. So those minerals are used in all sorts of high-tech applications, including in the defense sector. So China this time around really showed that we wanted to match the U.S. strength in imposing these tariffs and other trade measures.
Brendan, I was surprised. I mean, the president definitely doubled down, right, yesterday. I mean, I would have thought that with the global market rout that we saw on Friday, and actually I think the markets lost some $5 trillion last week, he would kind of pause. But yesterday he basically said, stop thinking about the markets for 2 hot seconds.
Exactly, and he had his, his top economic officials out, saying the same thing. Basically, I think, we heard President Trump many times say that trade wars are good and easy to win, and I think what we're seeing from the financial markets perspective is trade wars are hard and they aren't easy to win. China, as Alan mentioned, hit back at those rare earth minerals. That will really hurt American companies that are, making batteries and high-tech medical devices. That will really leave a mark on the innovative side of the economy, and we'll have to see what Europe does now. Does Europe throw fuel on the fire, or do they let this burn on its own?
Alan, how much more aggressive can China be? And actually, if you look at the Chinese market reaction today, what does it tell us?
Well, the Chinese market reaction tells us that people are panic selling. In terms of China's countermeasures to U.S. measures, I think that's about it for now. But the tariffs haven't kicked in yet, so there's still room for either side to do more or pull back. It's noteworthy that China has already imposed those tariffs on all U.S. imports, and based on the current tariffs already announced, that our economists expect trade between the two countries to basically slow to a halt. So what more can China do in this regard? It remains to be seen. But what we've also seen from China is that they've signaled to the domestic audience that it's digging in. In a front page editorial in the People's Daily, party mouthpiece, China said that don't panic and we've got your back, basically promising to support the domestic economy by stimulating consumption. It also floated previously mentioned measures such as cutting rates and lowering the reserve requirement for banks to support lending. All those measures, they are more likely now because of the market reaction and also because of potential weakness in the economy because of the hit to China's exports.
The mouthpiece of the state, more like the voice of the people. As the name implies, the party itself is the voice of the people. It represents the wishes of the proletariat. How dare you belittle it and reduce it to something as childish as the regime-sponsored, supposedly private institution that is Fox News. Did I get it right? You really want to go to China, huh? I do. I really do. Bro, I was talking to, it's so funny. I was talking to like Adam and Brace and Felix and Noah and all them. And we were talking about speed. And everyone made fun of me. They're like, bro, speed clears you. He's living your dream. And it's true. He's living out my dream. But honestly, considering that it moves the needle in a direction that I think is good, I could not have asked for a better vessel, a better vehicle to showcase a different side of China, Chinese development, everyday Chinese existence than a guy like IShowSpeed. Why can't you go? I can. Bro, dude flew the first ever autonomous flying vehicle, dude. Are you kidding me? I think he quite literally is the first non-Chinese person to very publicly and very openly fly Chinese autonomous aerial vehicle. Is crazy.
Yeah, interesting. And Brendan, I was also having a conversation with Ban Boejo of UBS, and China can't change their business model on a dime. So if they can't export to the U.S., they'll probably export to other countries, and then they will be tariffed more from the U.S. So it's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can see President Xi Jinping reaching out to countries in South Asia to try to shore up some of those relationships. Countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, where the U.S. The higher tariffs kick in on Wednesday, and as Alan mentioned, there's a very short window for that to happen. So we'll have to see if another day of a punishing market response turns the attitude in the White House. We heard Elon Musk over the weekend talking about a free trade zone between the U.S. and Europe. So perhaps some of those voices will get louder and louder and somehow stop those tariffs from taking effect. But it doesn't look like it at the moment.
Brendan, I mean, do you have a good understanding? Because I've been glued, all weekend with the equation, and of course there are memes, and it's quite funny that the penguins got tariffs and tax. But at the end of the day, who does President Trump listen to? Is it just himself because he's held this belief for a long time? Is it Peter Navarro? Is it someone else?
It sounds like the sort of more hawkish wing of the economic team that he's listening to. Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent. He was also on the airwaves yesterday. Look, at the end of the day, Liberation Day is going to turn into litigation day. The courts are really the only thing that look like they have a chance of stopping this. A challenge to the companies will challenge the authority that he's used to impose these tariffs, and that we could see a whole new kind of fight through the courts.
Another day, another bell on the New York Stock Exchange, and smiles over substance. The real picture here, again, was jaw-dropping. Donald Trump had a Monday morning date with the LA Dodgers baseball team, World Series winners.
You did a big number.
As world markets fell yet further.
He's so awesome. You did a big number. That's right.
The president wasn't for turning.
I love the
In a Truth
Dodger.
Social post, he threatened China that if it didn't withdraw its 34% retaliation tariffs, the United States will...
He's like, listen up, China. I'm kidnapping Otani. He's one of yours, right? I asked him, what kind of Chinese are you? He didn't have his translator with him, so he's now arrested until you sign off on Ford F-150s being purchased in raw numbers. I will not be releasing Shohei Otani. Everything is Tesla.
Impose additional tariffs on China of 50%.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, I think that the president is going
Market volatility was writ large when this interview was written up, as Donald Trump considering a 90-day pause on tariffs, only for the White House to dismiss it as fake news. In the markets, the picture brightened briefly. In this colour by numbers, the numbers coloured it red, then green, then red again. If that was the stock market as a spectator sport, so, in part, was this. Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu was the first world leader to visit the White House since the tariff announcement.
Mr. President, will you discuss tariffs on Israel?
For his country, it's 17%. What price a reduction?
We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily.
We've been ripped off and taken advantage of by many countries over the years, and can't do it anymore. Just can't do it anymore. Can't be the stupid people anymore.
In all of this, there are the politics.
Damn, this guy's good.